Well. If Inky could just do one thing right, I don't know. I don't know if it's even feasible. If everyone in chat can hear me, can you please type a 1? Silent Dragon, good to see you. We have a special guest that will be joining us today. We have Newman backstage. Yes. He's going to be doing the book reading with me. So fun. So, this book reading, I have renamed it Behind the Innocent of Darkness. Traveling Fools, good to see you. Mwah. Welcome in. This will be based off the book Pretty Girls. Yes, I did. I love you, Traveling Fools. You're freaking great. Thank you so very much for all of you hanging out. So the book, let me get to the book. The book is called Pretty Girls. The book is written by Karin. Very interesting book. That's what we'll be going through today. Let me scoot this over here just for a moment. There is 24 chapters in this book. We will not be reading the entire book. We're going to be doing so many chapters per day until the book series, this book section is done. And then we'll go on to another, crime on the couch, bedtime stories. Basically what I'm doing. So, let me start my intro and then we'll bring Newman up in the background and he will be reviewing the book with me. Mwah. Be right back. Welcome back. Let's welcome in Newman. My bestie, good to see you. Sisters, and one of them has like a really good life and the other one had like a not so good life, and they kind of like come together. They might be best friends, but they might be sisters.
Okay.
I don't really remember very well, but we will figure that out throughout
Nice.
the whole thing. There is 24 chapters in it, so I won't be reading 422 pages this evening. We probably break it up into quarters.
Okay.
That's still a lot, though. That's still 100 pages. Okay, maybe we'll break it into 6. I don't know. So we'll see.
We'll see where this tale takes us.
So I'm going to share screen. This is the cover of the book. If you would like to get it for yourself, it's a New York Times bestseller. Get to know. Good to see you. You're still my other bestie. Oh, don't be sad. Get to know is awesome. Please drop your links, you guys. I know Traveling Fools has a channel. I know Silent Dragon has a channel, and I never see you all drop your links. Get to know, drop your link. Everybody has a code, right? Yes, everybody has a code, so everybody is free to drop their link. Please do. Okay.
Here we go.
Here we go. You can say hi. You can say hi, Newman.
Hey, howdy, hey, everybody in the YouTube world there.
Oh, I could use the creepy sounds now.
Oh, yeah.
That wasn't a creepy one.
That was not. That was weird.
Wait, is it this one?
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Pond 5.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Let's see. I'll have to figure out how those all work, by the way. Because, Inky's a little slow.
Lord.
I know if I could just get my shiznit together.
You got this.
Silent Dragon says, come on, Newman, don't be shy.
Now look, I'm not shy. Now when I'm on my when I'm on my channel, I am not shy, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody, well, most of you know that's here know me by now. I am not shy. It's her channel. It's her live. I'm just here to help her. I don't know what I'm here to help her to do, but I'm here. Okay, I'm here for moral support and everything else. I think, sort of. Yeah, I get it.
Tony Ferris, good to see you. If my mic is too loud, can you guys let me know? Because it seems loud to me. Okay. Tony Ferris, it's good to see you. Okay, let me get my little pimp juice. I'm kind of shy, you guys. So,
No,
just
don't be
saying.
shy. I'll be the
Just saying.
shy one. You read and enjoy, so we can enjoy.
Okay, here we go.
Let's go.
So this is a narration of Pretty Girls. I may add in my own few little words and whatnot. When you first disappeared, your mother warned me that finding out exactly what happened to you would be worse than never knowing. We argued about this constantly because arguing was the only thing that held us together. Knowing the details wouldn't make it easier. She warned me that the details would tear you apart.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go.
Knowing the details wouldn't make it any easier. Nope. It was a man of science. I needed facts, whether I wanted to or not. My mind would not stop generating the hypothesis: abducted, raped, defiled, and rebellious. That was the sheriff's story. Sheriff.
Hmm.
Mm.
Really?
This is going to be very interesting, you guys. There is law enforcement involved. Like the GBI, the FBI, and how crooked they can be in this story. Yes.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Help us, Jesus.
Help us, Jesus. So that was the sheriff's theory, or at least his excuse when he was demanded answers he could not give. Your mother and I had always been secretly pleased that you were so headstrong and passionate about your causes. Once we were gone, we understood that these were the qualities that painted young men as smart, as ambitious, and young women as troubled. Yeah. So
Okay.
like if we're too ambitious or too go-getting, then we're the problem child, like the black sheep.
Sure. Sure.
Oh, I love you too, Harley Dad. It's good to see you all. We're doing a book reading. It's called Pretty Girls, but it's being re-narrated by me, Behind the Innocence of Darkness, because there's a lot of darkness and innocence and how someone's innocence was taken. And then all the crazy stuff that happens in between. You guys, it's intense. The book is intense. Okay. I digress. I
Gotcha.
digress.
We got this. We got this. Well, you
Okay.
got this.
Girls run off all the time. The sheriff had shrugged like you or any girl, like a week would pass, a month or a year, and then you would just come back into our lives offering a half-hearted apology about a boy you'd offered to follow or a friend that you joined on a trip across the ocean. You were 19 years old. Legally, you did not belong to us anymore. You belonged to yourself. You belonged to the world. Still, we organized search parties. We kept calling hospitals and police stations and homeless shelters. We posted flyers around town. We knocked on doors. We talked to our friends. We checked out abandoned buildings and burnt out houses on the bad side of town. Burnt down houses. Oh, burnt
Mm.
down houses, like in the hood.
Oh, geez. It's getting deep.
Mm-hmm. We hired private detective who took half of our savings and a psychic who took most of the rest. Wow. We appealed to the media, though media lost their interest and they had no like salacious details and breathlessly reports. Wow, that's a weird way to write that.
That is, isn't
Breathlessly
it?
reports. Yeah.
It's okay. Let's keep trucking. Let's see what we get. It's getting interesting.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. Hold on, I'm changing the size of my screen. It's different because it's on Kindle.
Mhm.
So
Right.
there. Make it for the vision impaired like myself.
Oh no.
Oh my gosh.
You're not supposed to
Okay.
have all those jokes. Come on, let me joke about being blind, okay? I'm good at it. Let's go. You got this.
Okay, I gotta find out where I was at. Okay, hospitals. We posted flyers around town. Okay, knocked on doors. Okay, burned down buildings. On the bad side of town. Okay. We hired a private investigator. Okay, I read that part. We appealed to the media, though the media lost interest when there was no salacious details to breathlessly report. This is what we knew. You were in a bar, you didn't drink anymore than usual. You told your friends that you weren't feeling well and that you were going to walk home. And that was the last time anyone ever reported seeing you. Over the years, there were many false confessions. Sadists riled around and in the mystery of where you had gone. They provided details that could not be proven, and leads could not be followed. At least they were honest when
Well,
they were called out. Then the psychics always blamed me for not looking hard enough. Wow, that's kind of mean in a sense. Like, why
putting the
would they be
blame
so mean?
all on one person, that's crazy.
Yeah. I- yeah. I mean, I would never want to tell um like a victim parent, like, that the one that their child is missing, like, oh, you're just not looking hard enough,
Hmm. I get it.
right?
Hmm.
Fireside, good to see you. She says, because I've never stopped looking. I understand why your mother gave up, or at least had appeared to. She had to rebuild her life, if not for herself or for what was left of her family. Your little sister was still home, and she was quiet and furtive and hanging
Right.
out with all kinds of girls that would talk her into doing things that she should not do, like sneak into a bar, hear music, never come home again.
Hmm.
Naughty girl. On the day we signed our divorce papers, your mother told me that her only hope was that the one day that we would find your body.
Lord.
That was when she clung to the idea that one day, eventually, we could lay you down to rest.
Hmm.
Oh,
Wow.
I know.
Okay.
That's so sad. I said that we might just find you in Chicago or Santa Fe or maybe Portland or some artistic commune. That maybe you had just wandered off to because you wanted to always be free. Your mother wasn't surprised to hear me say this. This was the time when the pendulum was still a swing of hope back and forth to us, and that someday maybe that she could take to her bed without sorrow. And some days that she came home from the store in her shirt and sweater and a pair of jeans, and that she would just give you that she would just give you back when you returned home to us. I remember clearly that day. I lost my hope. I was working in a veterinarian office downtown. Someone brought in an abandoned dog. The creature was pitiful. Oh, poor puppy dog. And
Hmm.
obviously had been abused. He was mostly a yellow lab, though his fur was ashen from the elements. Barbs were clumped up in his haunches. Oh, it isn't haunches. Aren't those like, they're like butt cheeks?
I'm not really sure on that one. I mean, it just sounds horrible either way. You know.
Ow. I think
Dang.
that's like the doggy butt cheeks.
Tag on.
Haunches, when you sit on your haunches. Yeah,
Hmm.
I think it's butt. There were hot
Yeah.
spots on his
I
bare
call it honey.
skin, his
Yeah.
hiney.
Yeah, it's honey. That's
Right?
it. Lord.
And, and then it said that he had like hot spots on his bare skin.
Mm.
Oh, those are like those where there's no fur.
No fur and it's real like red and it's evil.
Hmm. It says there were hot spots on his skin where he had scratched too much or licked too much and done the things that dogs do to soothe themselves when they are left alone. I spent time with him to let him know that he was safe. I let him I let him lick the back of my hand. I let him get used to my scent. After he calmed down, I started the examination. Ooh.
Hmm.
He was an older dog, but until recently his teeth had been pretty well kept. A surgical scar indicated that at some point he had an injured knee, and it seemed seemingly an expensive repair. The obvious abuse the animal suffered had not yet worked its way out to the muscle memory. Whenever I put my hand on his face, the weight of his head fell into the palm of my hand. I looked at the dog's woeful eyes.
Hmm.
Oh,
Poor thing.
I need tissue. I should get tissue. And my mind filled in details from this poor creature's life. I had no way of knowing the truth, but my heart understood that this is what had happened. He had not been abandoned. He had wandered off or slipped out of his leash. Oh, so he
Oh,
wasn't really abused. He was just,
he was a wanderer.
yeah, he just got misplaced.
That's
Poor
horrible.
little guy. Mm,
Poor little feller.
I know. He had no way of knowing the truth, but my heart understood this is what had happened. He had not been abandoned. He had just wandered off or slipped off his leash. His owners had gone to the store or left for vacation, and somehow a gate accidentally left open, a fence jumped, or a door left ajar by a well meaning house sitter. This beloved creature had found himself walking the streets with no sense of which direction it would take him back home. A group of kids or unspeakable monsters, or a combination of the both, found the dog and turned him from an adored pet into a haunted beast.
Oh no.
Like my father, I had devoted my life to treating animals, but that was the first time I had ever made connection between horrible things people do to animals and even more horrific things that they do to their other human beings. Here is how the chain ripped flesh.
Hmm.
Ooh,
Dang.
here was how. Oof. The chain ripped flesh. Here was the damage brought by kicking feet and the punching fists. Here's what the human being looked like when they wandered off into the world that did not cherish them, did not love them, and did not ever want them to go home. Your mother was right. The details tore me apart. That's how the
Jeez.
beginning of it starts.
Interesting. Very interesting.
We're not even into chapter 1.
Oh boy. We're getting there though.
Goodness gracious. Thank you all for chit chatting. Please don't forget to drop your links in chat. I greatly appreciate you all. Connect, connect, connect.
That's right. Teamwork is dream work, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes. Inky's trying to get comfortable. Sorry, guys. It's a little chilly, and I got me blankie.
Okay.
Okay, chapter 1. I got to figure out how to put my little mousy thing over here. Are you guys ready?
Let's get it.
Maybe I'll just do it with my left hand. Thank you, Newman, for dropping links for me.
You're
Newman's
very
always
welcome.
amazing at dropping links.
I
Tony
got-
Ferris, living for the thrill. Yes, yes, yes. Chapter 1. Hope everybody's got their popcorn, their drinks. A downtown Atlanta restaurant was empty, except for a lone businessman in the corner booth and a bartender who seemed to think he had mastered the art of flirty conversation. The pre-dinner rush was starting to slowly wind up. Cutlery and china clashing in the kitchen. The chef bellowed. A waiter huffed and laughed. The television over the bar offered a slow, steady beat of bad news. Claire Scott tried to ignore the endless drum noise that she had sat at the bar nursing her second club soda. Paul was 10 minutes late. He was never late. He was usually 10 minutes early. It was one of the things she teased him about. See, men are normally on time and ladies are normally always late. Just saying. Okay. Another? Sure. Claire smiled politely at the bartender. He had been trying to engage with her for quite a moment. She sat down. He was a young and handsome, which should have been flattering, but just made her feel old. Not because she
Okay.
was ancient, but because she had noticed that the closer she got to 40, the more annoyed she was with people. They were constantly making her think of sentences that began with, "When I was your age." I know, I do it all the time. I'm so sorry, guys.
There we go. I think I got every. Oop, I missed one. That's all right. Go ahead.
I do that all the time. When I was your age,
Uh-huh. I heard.
I do.
It's okay
The
to
third
have it.
third one, his voice took a teasing tone as he refilled her glass of club soda. "You're hitting him pretty hard." "I am?" He winked at her. "You let me know if you need a ride home." Claire laughed because she was she was easier because she was easier telling him to brush his hair out of his eyes and go back to college. She checked the time on her phone again. Paul was now 12 minutes late. She started catastrophize, catastrophe, catastrophizing, carjacking, hit by the bus. Maybe he got struck by a falling piece of airplane or maybe a fuselage, abducted by a madman, maybe even. The
Mm.
door the door opened, but it was a group of people, not Paul. Nope. They were all dressed in business casual, like workers from the surrounding
Don't sound
office
like a
building
fish.
by
Oh
the
no.
surrounding who wanted to grab an early drink before heading home from the suburbs and their parents' basements. Wow. "You've been following this?" The bartender nodded towards the television. "Not really," Claire said. Though of course she had been following the story. You couldn't turn on the TV without hearing the missing teenage girl. 16 years old, white, middle class, very pretty. No one ever seemed quite as outraged when an ugly woman went missing. "Tragic," he said. "She's
Oh my.
so beautiful." So it's about a 16-year-old girl who goes missing.
Right.
Claire looked at her
Oh.
phone again. Paul was now 13 minutes late. Today, of all days. He's an architect, not a brain surgeon. There's no emergency so dire that he couldn't be 2 seconds to text me and give me a call. She started spinning her wedding ring around her finger, which was a bit of a nervous habit. She didn't know she didn't know until Paul had pointed it out to her. They had been arguing about something that had been seemingly desperate important to Claire at the time, but now she couldn't remember what the topic was even about the argument that had occurred even last month. She had she had known Paul for 18 years and been married to Paul for almost as long. Wow, so they had been together for what, 36 years?
Yeah. You, at least.
Yeah.
Dang.
There wasn't much left that they could argue about with any conviction. "Sure, I can't interest you in something harder." The bartender was holding up a bottle of Stolies, but the meaning was clear. Claire, oh, I get it. That was an innuendo. Inky's slow, okay?
It's okay. It's okay.
Claire forced another laugh. She had known this type of man her entire life. Tall, dark, and handsome with twinkling eyes and the mouth that moved like honey. At 12, she would have scribbled his name all over her math book. At 16, she would have let him put his hands up her sweater. At 20, she would have let him put his hands anywhere that he wanted.
Oh
And
my.
now, at 38, she just wanted him to go away. She said, "No, thank you. My parole officer has advised me not to drink unless I'm going to be going home."
Oh
He
gee.
gave her a smile and said and said he didn't quite get the joke. "Bad girl? I like it. You should have seen me with my ankle monitor." She winked at him. Back to the new orange. Okay, black is the new orange. The front door, oh, I guess black is the new orange, like her ankle monitor.
I'm assuming. Yeah,
I don't
because she's home arrest, right? For the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she changed those in for the black monitor on her ankle. So yeah.
Wow. I don't know. I've never even seen one in real life. I've only seen them on Medea,
Well,
where
that's
she's like using the
basically it.
butter to try to get it off.
Yeah. Yep.
Zach Potato. Good to see you, Deja. Good to see you. Outback Windows. Good to see you, love. You all are awesome. Thank you for hanging out. Oh my goodness. The back door, the
Oh,
back door
Jesus.
opened. Oh my gosh. The back door opened. Paul. Claire felt a wave of relief as he walked towards her. She said, "You're late." Paul kissed her on the cheek. "Sorry, no excuse. I should have called, or at least text." "Yes, you should have." He told the bartender, um, I don't know what this is. It's like Glenditch single neat. I don't know whatever that means. Claire watched the young, oh, maybe it's like a type of liquor. Oh, Glen
Possible.
Glenfitch. Glenfiddich. Am I saying that right? I guess
Uh,
it's a type of liquor. A single shot, make it neat. Okay, I get it. I'm not a bartender, guys.
Me
Doesn't
neither.
make sense. Okay. Claire watched the young man pour Paul's scotch. Oh, it's scotch. Duh. I guess I could have just kept reading. Pour Paul's scotch with a previously unseen professionalism. Her wedding ring and her gentle brush offs and her outright rejection had been a minor obstacle compared to the big no of another man kissing her cheek. "Sir," he placed the drink in front of Paul, then headed towards the other end of the bar. Claire lowered her voice. "He offered me a ride home." Paul looked at the man for the first time since he'd walked through the door. "Should I go punch him in the nose?" "Yes." "Will you take me to the hospital when he punches me back?" "Yes." Paul smiled, but only because she was smiling too. "So how does it feel to be untethered?" Claire looked down at her naked ankle, half expecting to see the bruise or a mark where the chunky black ankle bracelet had been. 6 months had passed since she had worn a skirt in public, the same amount of time she had been wearing the court-ordered monitoring device. It feels like freedom. He straightened the straw by her drink, making it parallel to the napkin. "You're constantly tracked with your phone and the GPS in your car. I can't be sent to jail every time. I put down my phone or leave my car." Paul shrugged off the point which she thought was a very good one. "What about curfew?" "It's lifted. As long as I stay out of trouble until next year, my record will be expunged and it will be just like it never happened. Magic. Poof. More like a very expensive lawyer." He grinned. "It's cheaper than the bracelet you wanted from Cartier." Cartier. "None of you added the earrings. You shouldn't kind of joke about this kind of thing. But the alternative, I'll take it. Very seriously. Yes." She said, "It's weird. I know the monitor's not there anymore, but I can still feel it." Signal detection theory. He straightened the straw again. "Your perceptual systems are biased towards the monitor touching your skin. More often, the people experience the sensation with their phones. They feel it vibrating even when it's not. That's not what she got for. That's what she gets for marrying a geek." Paul stared at the television. "You think you'll find her?" Claire didn't respond. She looked down at her drink in Paul's hands. She never liked the taste of scotch. But being told she shouldn't drink, it even made her even want to go for a week-long bender. This afternoon, out of desperation for something to say, Claire told the court-appointed psychiatrist, that she absolutely despised being told what to do. Who the hell doesn't? The blousy woman had slightly incredulous. Claire had felt her cheeks turn red, but she knew better than to say what she pleased, particularly anything bad,
Okay.
particularly anything bad, or anything bad about it. That's where she had landed herself, as in a court-appointed therapy. For that
Jeez.
reason, yeah, because I guess she had a really smart mouth.
Sounds like it.
She wasn't going to give the woman the satisfaction of the breakthrough. Besides, Claire had come to that realization on her own minute. The 1 minute that her handcuffs were clamped around her wrists. Idiot. Idiot. She had mumbled to herself. as the cop had guided her into the back of the squad car. That's going in my report that the woman had briskly informed her. So like she was upset that the woman was like so mouthy with her.
Mm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
They were they were all women that day, female police officers of varying sizes and shapes with thick leather belts around their chunky waists, carrying all all the manner of their lethal devices. Claire felt that the things that would have gone a lot better if at least one of them had been a man, but sadly, there was not. That was not the case. This is where feminism had gotten to her, locked in the back of a sticky squad car with a skirt and her tennis dress riding up her thighs. At the jail, Claire's wedding ring, watch, and tennis shoelaces had been taken by a large woman with a mole between her hairy eyebrows, whose general appearance reminded Claire of a stink bug.
Oh my. Oh me.
What a visual.
That's horrible.
There was no hair growing out of the mole. And Claire wanted to ask why she bothered to pluck the mole. Why she bothered to pluck, but they're not, but not her eyebrows.
Sounds
Why
like
do
a
you pluck
family
the
member.
mole but not your eyebrows? Ew.
That's nasty.
But it was too late. Another woman, this one tall and reedy like a praying mantis, was already taking Claire into the next room.
Ooh.
The fingerprinting was nothing like on TV. Instead of ink, Claire had to press her fingers onto a filthy glass plate so the swirls could be digitized into the computer. Her swirls apparently were very faint. It took several tries. Good thing I didn't rob a bank, Claire said, then added, ha ha ha, to convey her humor.
Sound like she's just gonna be smart all the way through the jail system, ain't she?
Mm-hmm. Pressed evenly, and the praying mantis. Pressed evenly, the praying mantis said. You know, the praying mantis must be like a tall, like
Yeah, Linky.
tall, linky kind of girl, lady,
Mm-hmm.
woman, whatever. Yeah. Could you imagine? Like I just had a visual of a praying mantis,
Yeah, as soon as you said the woman with the mole in the middle of her eyebrows, I mean that was just a
like
replica of a bad vision. It's like,
like Shrek.
oh God. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. Pressed evenly, the praying mantis said, chewing off the wings of a fly. Claire's Claire's mugshot was taken against a white background with the ruler that had clearly off was clearly off by an inch. She wondered aloud why she wasn't asked to hold a sign with her name and inmate number. Photoshop template, maybe?
Oh no.
The praying mantis said in a bored tone that indicated the question was not a new one. You know,
Hmm.
she was like, mm-hmm. I guess everybody had asked.
Right.
It was the only picture Claire had even taken where no one had to have her smile. Oh my God, why am I so tongue tied? Maybe
It's
if I
okay.
take the gum out. Sorry, this is my first book reading.
Hey, I'm sure they're enjoying it. Surely. I'm enjoying it. Let's go.
You guys are sweet. That's why.
What?
The third policewoman who buckle. Oh, okay. The third policewoman who's bucking the trend had a nose like a mallard.
Oh my God.
Oh man. See, this is why books are so much better than like watching a movie because like you have like these little visualizations, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
okay, so she has like this big mallard duck
Right.
looking
Like a Daffy Duck
beak.
walking around.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's the third then the third policewoman who's bucking the trend had a nose like a mallard, had taken Claire to the holding cell where surprisingly Claire was not only the only woman in the tennis outfit. Hey, what are you in for? The other tennis outfitted inmate had asked. She looked hard and strung out and had obviously been arrested while playing with a different set of balls.
Oh.
And
Oh
they
my.
weren't pink fuzzy ones like Inky.
No. And they probably weren't crooked either. Oh Jesus.
Murder. Claire had said because she had already decided that she wasn't going to take this seriously. Hey, Paul had finished his scotch and was signaling the bartender for a refill. What are you thinking about over there? I'm thinking about your day was probably worse than mine if you're ordering a second drink. Paul rarely drank. It was something they had in common. Neither one of them liked feeling out of control, which had made jail a real bummer because you have no control there. She asked him, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I said, you're right.
She asked him, everything all right? It's good right now. He rubbed her back with his hands. What did the shrink say? Claire waited until the bartender had returned to his corner. She said, I'm not being forthcoming about my emotions. That's not like you at all. They smiled at each other. Another old argument wasn't worth having anymore. I don't like being analyzed, Claire said. She could picture her analyst offering an exaggerated shrug as she demanded, who the hell does? You know what I was thinking today? Paul took her hand. In his palm, it felt rough. He had been working in the garage all weekend. I was thinking about how much I loved you. That's a funny thing for the husband to say to his wife. It's true, though. Paul pressed her hand to his lips. I can't imagine what my life would be like without you.
Okay.
You are awesome. Yes, you are.
Yes, you are.
Oh, I didn't say it right. Yes, you are.
Good enough. You said it good enough.
Tighter, she said, because Paul was the one who was always picking up abandoned shoes and various items of clothing that should have been put in the laundry basket, but somehow they always ended up in the front bathroom sink. He said, I know things are hard right now, especially with he tilted his head towards the television, which was showing the new photo of the missing 16-year-old girl. Claire looked at the set. The girl really was beautiful, athletic, lean, with dark, wavy hair. Paul said, I just want you to know I'm always going to be here for you, no matter what. Claire felt her throat start to tighten. She took him for granted sometimes. That was the luxury of a long marriage. But she knew that she loved him. She needed him. He needed what he needed. He was the anchor that kept her from drifting away. He said, you know what? You're the only woman I've ever loved. She invoked her college predecessor, Ava Guilford. Would be shocked to hear that. There must have been another woman in the picture at some point, Miss Ava Guilford.
Maybe.
Don't play. I'm being serious. He leaned in close with his forehead almost touching her. You're the love of my life, Claire. You're everything to me. Despite my criminal record, he kissed her. Really, he really kissed her. She tasted like scotch with a hint of peppermint.
Interesting. Interesting combination.
Do they put peppermint in scotch? I don't know. Like one of those
guess
little peppermint
maybe
things.
if you ask for it, I don't know.
And felt a rush of pleasure with his fingers stroking the inside of her thigh. When they stopped for air, she said, let's go home. Paul finished his drink in one swallow. He tossed some cash onto the bar, but his hand stayed at Claire's back. As they left the restaurant, so he walked her out with his hand on her lower back.
Sure.
A cold gust of wind picked up the hem of her skirt. Paul rubbed her arm to keep her warm. He was walking so close to her that she could feel his breath on her neck. Where did you park? Parking deck, she said. I'm on the street. He handed the keys to her. Here, take my car. Let's go together. Let's go here. Let's go here. Pulled her into the alleyway and pressed her back against the wall. Ooh, it's about to get kinky, you all. I'm just putting it out there. It might get a little kinky for just a minute. Claire opened her mouth to ask what had gotten into him, but then he was kissing her already. His hand slid beneath her skirt. Huh?
I said, ruh-roh.
Yeah. His hand slid underneath her skirt. Claire gasped, but not so much because he took her breath away, but because the alley was dark and the streets were not empty. She could see men in suits strolling by, heads turning, eyes tracking the scene until the last moment. This was how people ended up on the internet. Paul, she put her hand to his chest, wondering what had happened to her vanilla husband. Who thought it was kinky if they didn't go to the guest room? People are watching. Back here? He took her hand, leading it deeper into the alley. Claire stepped over to the graveyard of cigarette butts as she followed him. The alley was a T-shape, intersecting with another service alley for the restaurants and shops. Hardly a better situation. She imagined fry cooks standing at the open doors with cigarettes in their mouths and iPhones in their hands. Even without spectators, there were all kinds of reasons she could not do this. Then again, no one liked being told what to do. Paul pulled her around the corner. Claire had a quick moment to scan the empty surroundings before her back was pressed up against another wall. His mouth covered hers. His hands cupped her ass. Beep!
Whoops.
He wanted to do this so badly. And she wanted it too. She closed her eyes and let herself give in. Their kisses deepened. He tugged down her underwear. She helped him, shuddering because it was cold. Oh, she helped him. Shuddering because it was cold and it was dangerous, and she was so ready and that she didn't care anymore. Claire. Claire? He whispered into her ear. Tell me you want this. She says, I want this. Tell me again. I want this. Without warning, he spun her around. Claire's cheeks grazed the brick. Ouch. That would hurt.
Go ahead, feel good.
He had her pinned to the wall. She pushed back against him. He groaned, taking the move for excitement, but she could barely breathe. Paul, don't move. Claire understood the words, but her brain took several seconds to process the fact that they had not come from her husband's mouth. Oh.
That ain't cool. Hit the brakes.
Whoa. That means there's somebody else in there. There's somebody else in the alleyway.
Oh, boy.
Turn around. Paul started to turn. Not you, asshole. Her. He meant her. Claire couldn't move. Her legs were shaking. She could barely hold herself up. I said, turn the fuck around. Paul's hands gently wrapped around Claire's arms. She stumbled as she slowly turned around. There was a man standing directly behind Paul. He was wearing a black hoodie zipped just below the thick tattooed neck. A sinister-looking rattlesnake arched across the Adam's apple, its fangs showing a wicked grin. Hands up. The snake's mouth bobbled and the man spoke. We don't want trouble. Paul's hands were in the air. His body was perfectly still. Claire looked at him. He nodded once, telling her it was going to be okay, when clearly it was not. My wallet's in my back pocket. The man wrenched out the wallet with one hand. Claire could only assume a gun was in the other. She saw it in her mind's eye, black and shiny, pressed into Paul's back. It was black and shiny, and it was pressed into Paul's back. Here. Paul took off his wedding ring, his class ring, his watch. She had brought it for him 5 years ago. A Petite Philippe. She had bought it for him 5 years ago. His initials were on the back. Claire. Paul's voice was strained. Give him your wallet. Claire stared at her husband. She felt the insistent tapping of the carotid artery pulsing in her pulsing in her neck. Paul had a gun in his back. They were being robbed. That's what's going on. This was real. This was really happening. She looked down at her hand, the movement tracking slowly because she was in shock and terrified and didn't know what to do. Her fingers were still wrapped around Paul's keys. She had been holding on to them the entire time. How could she have sex with him? How could she have sex with him if she was still holding his keys? Claire, Paul repeated, get your wallet. She dropped the keys into her purse. She was pulling out her wallet and handed it to the man. He jammed it into his pocket and then he held up his hand again. Phone. Claire retrieved her iPhone, all of her contacts, her vacation photos from the last few years of St. Martin, London, and Paris. The ring, too. The man glanced up and down the alley. Claire did the same. There was no one. Even the side streets were empty. Her back was still to the wall. The corner leading to the main road was an arm length away. There were people on the street, lots of people. The man read her thoughts. Don't be stupid. Take off the ring. Claire took off her wedding ring. This was okay to lose? They had insurance. This was okay to lose. They had insurance. It wasn't even the original ring they had picked out many years ago when Paul had finally finished his internship and passed his registration exam. Earrings, the man ordered. Come on, bitch, move. Claire reached up to her earlobe. Her hands had started to tremble. She didn't remember putting in the diamond studs this morning, but now she could see herself standing in front of the jewelry box. That was her last passing before her eyes vacant recollections of things. Hurry! The man waved his free hand and urged her on. Claire fumbled with the backs of the diamond studs. A tremble made her fingers thick and useless. You know, like when you're like stressed, like
Yeah.
what is it? Like your blood pressure like raises, so like your hands and feet and stuff do swell.
Yeah, they sweat and tremble and
Yeah.
Mhm.
Hurry! The man waved his free hand and urged her on. Claire fumbled with the backs of the diamond studs and trembled. A tremble made her fingers thick and useless. She saw herself at Tiffany's picking out the earrings, her 30th birthday. Paul giving her, "You can't believe that we're really doing this. Look at the sales lady." She took them back into the special secret room where there was the high dollar purchases were made. Claire dropped the earrings in the man's open hand. She was shaking, her heart beat like a snare drum. That's it. Paul turned around. His back was pressed up against Claire, blocking her, protecting her. He still had his hands in the air. You have everything. Claire could see the man over Paul's shoulder. He wasn't holding a gun. He was holding a knife. A long, sharp knife with a serrated edge and a hook at the point that looked like all sorts of things a hunter would use to gut an animal. Paul said, "There's nothing else. Just go." The man didn't go. He was looking at Claire like he had found something more expensive to steal than her $36,000 earrings. His lips weakened. His lips tweaked in a smile. One of those front teeth was plated in gold. Oh, so like he must have had like a gold toothy.
Mm-hmm.
She realized that the rattlesnake tattoo had a matching gold fang. Oh, well, that's cute. Then she realized that it wasn't just a robbery. So did Paul. He said, "I have money." No shit. The man's fist hammered to Paul's chest. Claire felt the impact on her own chest. His shoulder blades cutting into her collarbone. His head snapping into her face. The back of her head banged against the brick wall. Ouch. Claire was momentarily stunned. Stars fireworked in front of her eyes. She tasted blood in her mouth. She blinked. She looked down. Paul was writhing on the ground. "Paul." She reached for him, but her scalp ignited with white hot pain. Oh, from hitting the brick wall.
Mm-hmm.
The man had grabbed her by the hair. He wrenched her down the alley. Claire stumbled. Her knees grazed the pavement. The man kept walking and almost jogged. Wow. She had to bend at the waist to even alleviate some of the agony. One of her heels broke off. She tried to look back. Paul was clutching his arm like he was having a heart attack. Oh.
Dang.
"No," she whispered, even as she wondered why she wasn't screaming. "No, no, no." The man dragged her forward. Claire could hear herself wheezing. Her lungs had filled like they had filled with sand. He was taking her towards a side street. There was a black van that she hadn't noticed before. Claire dug her fingernails into his wrists. He jerked her head. She tripped. He jerked her again. The pain was excruciating, but it was nothing compared to the terror. She wanted to scream. She needed to scream, but her throat, it was being choked closed.
Hmm.
He was going to take her somewhere else in the van. Ooh, where are they going? Somewhere private, somewhere awful that she might not ever leave again. No, she begged, please, no, no. The man let go of Claire, but not because she asked him to. He spun around with a knife in the front of him. Paul was up on his feet. He was running towards the man, and he let a guttural howl as he lunged into the air. It all happened so very quickly, too quickly. There was no slowing of time, so that Claire could hear be the bare witness of several milliseconds of her husband's struggle. Paul couldn't have outran this man on a treadmill or solved an equation before the guy had a chance to sharpen his pencil. But the opponent had something over Paul Scott that he didn't teach him in graduate school: how to fight with a knife. Yeah, that's a little different, I guess. I don't know. I would be afraid I would get slashed. I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There was only a whistling noise as the blade sliced through the air. Claire had expected more sounds: a sudden slap as the hook tip of the knife punctured Paul's skin, a grinding noise as the serrated edge sawed past the ribs, a scrape of the blade separating a tendon or cartilage. Paul's hands went into his belly. The pearl handle of the knife had stuck between his fingers. He stumbled back against the wall with his mouth open and his eyes almost comically wide. He was wearing a navy blue Tom Ford suit that was too tight across his shoulders. Claire had made a mental note to get the seam let out, but now it was too late because the jacket was soaked with blood. Paul looked down at his hands. The blade was sunk into the hilt, almost like, I guess, like all the way in
Mm-hmm.
to the where like a handle part where it's stuck all the way in, all the way to the flat part.
Right. Most likely.
His blue shirt flowered with blood. He looked shocked. They were both shocked. They were supposed to have an early dinner tonight, celebrate Claire's successful navigation of criminal justice system, not bleed to death in a cold, dank alley. She heard footsteps. The snake man was running away with their rings, jewelry, and jingling in his pockets. Help, Claire said, but it was a whisper, so low that she could barely hear the sound of her own voice. Help, she stuttered. But who could help them? Paul was always the one who brought the help. Remember, she was saying that in the beginning.
Right. Yeah.
Paul was the one who took care of everything until now. He slid down the brick wall and landed on the hard ground. Claire knelt down beside him. Her hands moved out in front of her, but she didn't know where else to touch. She didn't know where else to touch him. 18 years of loving him, 18 years of sharing his bed. She had pressed her hands to his forehead to check for fevers, wiped his face when he was sick, kissed his lips, kissed his cheek, his eyelids, even slapped him once out of anger. But
No.
but now she did not know where to touch him, because he's bleeding.
Right.
Claire, Paul's voice. She knew his voice. Claire went to her husband. She wrapped her arms and legs around him. She pulled him close to her chest. She pressed her lips to his side of his head. She could feel the heat leaving his body. Paul, please, be okay. You have to be okay. I'm okay. And it seemed like the truth until it wasn't anymore. The tremor started in his legs, and it worked into a violent shaking by the time it reached the rest of his body. His teeth chattered. His eyelids fluttered. He said, I love you. Please, she whispered, burying her face in his neck. She smelled his aftershave, felt the rough patch of beard he had missed with the razor this morning. Wherever she touched him, the skin was so very cold. Please don't leave me, Paul. Please. I won't, he promised. But then he did.
Mm-mm-mm.
So
Lord.
what do you think?
It's getting interesting. It's getting really interesting. Now he's gone. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
oh boy.
So they've been together for like 36 years. And like he's always been her savior. And so now they got mugged, all their jewelry, everything got stolen, and
A
he's
lot's
gone.
taken. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is like, your high school sweetheart. And they've been together this whole time. Hold on, I got to
Wow.
adjust.
It's one of those. Where do you start now? Where do you
Hmm.
go? What do you do?
It's crazy.
We're about to find out, I'm sure.
Should I read chapter 2? That was only chapter 1.
I would go to chapter 2, yeah. For real.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
How about chat? Chat, do you guys want me to go to chapter 2?
It's intriguing. It's amazing.
I'll see what chat has to say. Come on, chat. Do we want to do chapter 2? I might get pretty good at this. We'll see. I don't know.
Hey.
This is something that I'm really thinking about trying to do regularly instead of like, like those really heavy true crime cases and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like this better, just a little bit. It's not so serious and stuff. I mean, it's serious, but
It's intriguing. I mean,
it doesn't have to be real life.
right. Exactly. But it does work because, like I said, it keeps me occupied and keeps me entertained, keeps me thinking.
Chat didn't say nothing.
It's okay.
Chat, what's wrong with you, chat? Okay. Chapter 2.
Let's go.
So Lydia Delgado stared out at the sea of teenage cheerleaders on the gym floor and said a silent prayer of thanks to her daughter, who was not one of them. Not that she had anything against cheerleaders. She was 41 years old and she had her days of hating cheerleaders when, the cheerleading days were well over. She just
Mhm.
hated their mothers. Lydia Delgado, Mindy Parker. Sorry.
Okay.
I digress. Lydia Delgado. Mindy Parker always greeted everybody by their first and last names with their triumphant tilt at the end. See how smart I am for knowing everyone's full name? Duh. Mindy Parker. Linda said in her own tone, very many octaves lower. She couldn't help it. She always had been contrary. First game of the season. I think our girls are really going to have a chance this year. Absolutely, Lydia agreed. Everyone knew it was going to be a massacre. Anyway, Mindy straightened out her left leg, raised her arms over her head, and stretched towards her toes. I need to get Dee's signed permission slip. Lydia caught herself before she asked, "What permission slip?" "I'll have it for you tomorrow." Fantastic, Mindy hissed out an overly generous steam of air as she came out of that stretch with her pursed lips and pronounced underbite. Wow. They're so graphic. Pronounced underbite. I would be like,
Yeah, that's horrible.
isn't that where your
Jeez.
bottom teeth stick
Yeah.
out?
Yeah.
Stick out
It's like,
above
help me,
your.
Jesus. What is this?
It looks like, what is that? A bulldog?
An English bulldog, yeah.
Yeah. Arr, arr, arr.
Oh my Lord.
We never wanted Dee to feel left out. We're so proud of our scholarship students. Thank you, Mindy. Lindy plastered her smile. It said that she had a smart. Sorry, I'm trying to be like read it like it's supposed to be read, but it's hard because I've never read it before. I haven't read the book.
You're doing great.
I kind of watched like the previews on it. Okay. It's sad that she had to be smart to get into Westerly instead of just having a lot of money. Mindy plastered her own smile. Okay, well, cool beans. I'll be looking for the permission slip in the morning. She squeezed Lydia's shoulder as she bounced out the bleachers towards the other mothers. Or mothers, as Lydia thought of them, because she was really trying hard not to use the word motherfucker anymore.
Right.
Lydia scanned the basketball court for her daughter. She had a moment of panic that nearly stopped her heart, but then she spotted Dee standing in the corner. She was talking to Bella Wilson, her best friend, as they bounced the basketball back and forth between them. Why do we have a question when that's the last time Newman? Honey Nut Cheerios, because I'm eating them right now.
You're silly.
That was, huh?
I said he's silly.
Was this young woman really her daughter? 2 seconds ago, Lydia had been changing her diapers, and then she had turned her head for just a moment and looked back, and Dee was 17 years old. She would be heading off to college in less than 10 months. To Lydia's order, she already started packing the suitcases, and Dee's closet was so full that the zipper wouldn't even close all the way. Lydia blinked away the tears because it wasn't normal for a grown woman to cry over a suitcase. Instead, she thought about the permission slip that Dee had not given her. The team was probably going on a special dinner that Dee was afraid Lydia couldn't afford. Her daughter did not understand that they were not poor. Yes, they were struggling early on as Lydia tried to get her dog grooming business off the ground, but they were solidly middle class now, which was way more than what most people could say. They just weren't Westerly wealthy. Most
Right.
Westerly Academy parents could easily afford 30 grand a year to send their kids to private school. They could ski at Tahoe every Christmas or charter private planes to the Caribbean. But even though Lydia could never provide the same for Dee, she could pay for her daughter to go to Chops and order a fucking steak. She would, of course, find a less hostile way to convey this to her child. And it's hard sometimes, like when you have kids, like, you know, even if you do have money, you just want to be like, well, you want to teach them like the value of the dollar. You know what I mean? Like, you don't
Sure.
want them to just be like everything handed to them without understanding, you know?
Yeah, teach them how to respect money and use it for when they need it, not just go ahead and blow it on everything you find. Come
Yeah.
on.
Oh, Silent Dragon is back. He said, yes, chapter 2. Well, I was behind my dad.
Stop.
Oh, it's okay, Silent Dragon. We love you. Little Aparoni.
Little poor feller.
That little poor feller.
Uh-huh.
She would find a less hostile. Okay, I read that part. Okay. Lydia reached into her purse and pulled out a bag of potato chips and salt and grease. The salt and grease provided an instant rush of comfort, like letting a couple of Xanax melt under your tongue. She had told herself that, when she put on her sweatpants this morning, that she was going to the gym and that she had gone near the gym, but only because there was a Starbucks right there in the parking lot. Thanksgiving was around the corner. The weather was freezing cold. Lydia had taken a rare day off from work. She deserved a start, of which a pumpkin caramel spice latte. Yum. She needed the caffeine. There was so much crap that she had to cram in before Dee's game. The grocery store, pet food, store, Target, pharmacy, the bank, back home to drop everything off, back out by noon to see her hairdresser because Lydia was too old just to get her hair cut anymore. She had to go through the tedious process of coloring the gray in her blonde hair. So, like she didn't look like Corella DeVille.
Right.
Her lesser cousin. Yeah. Not to mention the other new hairs that required attention, like our little old lady flyaways, we get those.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Lydia's fingers flew to her upper lip. Potato chip salt burned the raw skin. Jesus Christ, she mumbled. Because she had forgotten she had got her mustache waxed today. So like the vinegar and salt and stuff would like sting.
Ouch.
She got her little mustache waxed.
Lord.
Yeah. She said that the girl used a new astringent, ow, that caused an angry rash to come out on
Oh,
Lydia's upper lip. So instead of the one or two stray hairs that had, flown on, she had a full on red handlebar mustache, you know, from where it had got waxed.
yeah.
She could only imagine Minda Parker conveying this to the other mothers. Lydia Delgado's mustache rash. Lydia
That's
crammed
awful.
another handful of chips in her mouth. She chewed loudly, not caring about the crumbs on her shirt, not caring about the mothers that could see her gorging on carbs. There was a time when she used to try harder. The time had been before she had hit her 40s. Juice diets, juice fasts, the
Yeah.
no juice diet, the fruit diet, the egg diet, curves boot camp. 5-minute cardio, 3-minute cardio, the South Beach diet, the Atkins diet, the paleo diet, jazzercise. Linda's closet contained a veritable eBay of failures: Zumba shoes, cross trainers, hiking boots, belly dancing symbols, and thongs that had never quite made it to the pole dancing class of
Oh,
one of her clients had swore by. Lydia knew that she was out. She knew that she was overweight, but she really wasn't fat. She was just westerly fat. The only thing that was certain of that what she was or wasn't that she wasn't thin, except for the brief respite during her late teens. Her early 20s, she had struggled with her weight her entire life. This was the dark truth behind Lydia's burnt hatred for the mothers. She couldn't stand them.
darn.
She couldn't stand them because she couldn't be more like them. She liked potato chips. She loved bread. She lived for the good cupcakes, 1, 2, or 3. She didn't have time to work out with a trainer or, back-to-back Pilates classes. She had a business to run. She was a single mother. She had a boyfriend who occasionally required maintenance. Not just that, but she worked with animals. It was like it was hard work. It wasn't glamorous. When you could just come from, aspirating anal glands of a slovenly dachshund.
Hmm.
Ew.
Lord.
Lydia's fingers hit the empty bottom of the potato chip bag. Well, those two sentences should never have been even close to each other. I'm
Yeah,
just
no.
saying.
Mm-mm. Wow.
Blech. She felt miserable. She hadn't wanted the chips. After the first bite, she didn't even really taste them. Behind her, mothers erupted into cheer. One of the girls was doing a series of handsprings across the gym floor. The movement was fluid and perfect and very, very impressive until the girl threw up her hands at the finish, and Lydia realized she wasn't a cheerleader, but the cheerleader's mother. The cheerleader's mother, Penelope Ward, Mindy Parker bellowed, "You go, girl." Lydia groaned as she searched for her purse for something else to eat. Penelope was heading straight towards her. Lydia brushed the crumbs off her shirt and tried to think of something to say that wasn't strung together with expletives. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's the F word, the
Good
SB
luck.
word. Yeah. Fortunately, Penelope was stopped by Coach Henley. Lydia exhaled a sigh of relief. She pulled her phone out of her purse. There were 16 emails from the school notice board, most of them dealing with the recent plague of head lice wreaking
Oh,
havoc in the elementary classes. While Lydia had been reading through the post, the new message popped up. An urgent plea from the headmaster explained that there was really no way to find out who had started the lice pandemic. For the parents to please stop asking and which child it was to blame. Lydia deleted them all. She answered a few text messages from her clients wanting to make appointments. She checked her spam to make sure Dee's permission slip hadn't accidentally gone astray. It had not. She emailed the girl she hired to help with the paperwork and asked her again to submit her time card, which seems like an easy thing to remember because, that's how she got paid. But the child had been hand raised by an overbearing mother who couldn't remember how to tie her shoes unless it was on a post-it note with a smiley face physically attached to the shoe with the words, "Tie your shoes, love mom. P.S. I'm so proud of you."
well.
That was being ungenerous. Lydia was no stranger to post-it mothering. In her defense, her helicoptering tend to revolve around making sure that Dee could take care of herself, learn how to take out the trash, and I will kill you, love you, mom. Or I will kill you, love you, mom.
Mm-hmm.
You better take out the trash or you're going to get a butt whooping if I
Right.
only had that sound.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The witch. Let's go.
Hmm.
Oh boy.
If only she had been warned that teaching this sort of independence could lead it in its own set of problems, such as finding your overpacked suitcase in your daughter's closet when she had 10 whole months before she was supposed to leave for college. Lydia dropped her phone back into her purse. She watched Dee pass the ball to Rebecca, the pale British girl who wouldn't be able to score if it was right in her face. Though, though, Lydia smiled back at her daughter generously. At Dee's age, Lydia had been fronting a really terrible riot girl band and threatening to drop out of high school. Dee was on the debate team. She volunteered at the YMCA, and she has very sweet natured and generous, smart, and as smart as hell. Her capacity for detail was astounding, if not highly annoying during arguments, even at a very young age. Dee had an uncanny ability to mimic back whatever she heard, especially if she heard it from Lydia, which is why Dee was called D instead of the beautiful name Lydia,
Mm-hmm.
which was put on her birth certificate.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. Deedus Christ. Her sweet little child used to scream, legs and arms kicking kicking from her high chair. Deedus Christ. Deedus. In retrospect, Lydia could see it had been mistake to let her know that it was funny. Like sometimes when our kids do really silly, stupid stuff, like we shouldn't really laugh, especially if it's inappropriate, because it'll grow with them. I'm just saying it'll continue growing.
Right. Well, it teaches them it's okay when in all aspects it's not.
Yeah, like when they enunciate something incorrectly, and it's kind of like it ends up being a bad word.
Right.
Yeah.
But we
James from Ottawa. Good to see you, love.
the snicker and they tend to think, oh, they snickered. It's
Mhm.
okay.
Instantly, Lydia checked the doors. She then heard the mothers tittering behind her and realized that she was trapped. Uh-oh, she's trapped in there with them women's. Penelope was something of a celebrity at Westerly. Her husband was a lawyer, which was typical for the Westerly dad. But he was also a state senator who had recently announced that he was going to run for the U.S. House of Representatives. Of all the fathers at the school, Branch Ward was probably the most handsome, but was largely because he was under 60 and still had a clear view of his feet. He didn't have the dad bod yet, I guess.
Right.
And Penelope, she was perfect. She was the perfect politician's wife in all of her husband's promos. She could be seen looking up at Branch with the googly-eyed devotion of a border collie. She was attractive but not distracting. She was thin but not anorexic. She had given up a partnership at the top law firm to pop out of 5 fine Aryan-looking children.
Hmm.
She was president of Westerly PTO, which was the pretentious and unnecessary way of saying PTA. She ran the organization with an iron fist. All of the memos were bullet pointed to perfection, so concise and focused that even the lower mothers had no trouble following. She tended to speak in bullet points too. Okay, ladies, she would say, clapping together her hands. The mothers were very big clappers. Refreshments,
Let's go.
party favors, balloons, table dressings, cutlery. Lydia, there you are, Penelope called, her knees and elbows positioned as they jogged up onto the bleachers and plopped down beside Lydia. Yum! She pointed at the empty bag of chips. I wish I could eat those. I bet I could make you, oh, Lydia said in her dry sense of humor. Penelope pivoted her body towards Lydia, establishing eye contact with like a intense Persian cat. I don't know what you do. I don't know how you do it. You run your own business, you take care of your home, you raise fantastic daughter. She put her hand on her chest. You're my hero. Hmm. Lydia felt her teeth start to gnash, and these such accomplishments. Young young lady Penelope's voice dropped an octave. She went to middle school with that missing girl, didn't she?
Hmm.
The missing girl.
Mm-hmm.
This is where it starts getting good.
Starting to make sense.
I don't know. Lydia lied. Lydia lied. Because remember, she was watching it when she was in the bar.
Yeah.
She was watching it on the news channel. Anna Kilpatrick. Learn the name because we're going to be using it a lot.
Okay.
I don't know. Lydia lied. Anna Kilpatrick had been 1 year behind Dee. They both had been in the same PE class through their social circles, never overlapping. Such a tragedy, Penelope said. They'll find her. It's only been a week. But what can happen in a week? Penelope forced her shudder, forced a shudder. It doesn't bear even thinking about. So don't think about it. That is such fantastic advice, she said, sounding both relieved and yet patronizing. Say, where's Rick? We need Rick here. Here's our little shot of testosterone. He's in the parking lot. Lydia had no idea where Rick was, really. They had a hideous fight this morning, and she was pretty sure he never wanted to see her again. No, that was wrong. Rick would show up for Dee, but he would also probably sit on the other side of the gym because of Lydia. Rebound, rebound. Penelope screamed to the girls that were still warming up. Gosh, I've never noticed before, but Dee looks just like you.
Mm-hmm.
Lydia felt a tight smile on her face. That wasn't the first time someone had pointed out the resemblance. Dee had Lydia's pale skin and violet blue eyes. Ooh, that sounds pretty. Violet blue eyes. Their faces were shaped the same. Their mouths smiled in the same way. They were both natural blondes, something they had over every other blonde in the gym. Dee's hourglass figure only hinted at what could happen later in life.
Mm-hmm.
If she had sat around in sweatpants inhaling potato chips, yeah, she'd become quite round. At that age, Lydia, too, had been just as beautiful and just as thin. Unfortunately, life had taken a toll and a lot of hell out of a lot of cocaine to make her go back to looking that way. So Penelope slapped her hands on her thighs and she turned her back to Lydia. I was wondering if you could help me out. Well, okay. Lydia drew out the word and to convey to her this great intrepidation. That was a mouthful. Great
Oh, yeah.
intrepidation. This is how Penelope sucked you in. She didn't tell you to do things. She told you that she needed your help. It's about the International Festival next month. International Festival, Lydia echoed as if she had never heard the week-long fundraiser. I think this is about that permission slip thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The week-long fundraiser where the whitest men and women in the North Atlantic sat around in Dolce Gabbana sampling pierogies and Swedish meatballs. Pierogies. Is that?
Pierogies.
I think that's how you say it. Pierogies.
We're gonna go with it.
I think
Yeah.
pierogi is like a. Is that like a sandwich? It's like kind of like a. I don't know. And Swedish meatballs made by their children's nannies. Must be nice. Must be nice. I'll send you the email, Penelope offered. Anyway, I was wondering if you could bring me some Spanish dishes. She pronounced each word with confidence, Spanish accent, probably picked it up from her pool boy. My husband and I had escalavida while we were in Catalina last year. Oh, amazing. Lydia had been waiting for years to say, I'm not Spanish, really, Penelope. I was undaunted. Tacos and then burritos. Maybe some El Polo El Barbacoa. I'm not from Mexico either. Oh, well, obviously, Rick's not your husband, but I thought since his name was Delgado and Dee's the father, well, or Dee's father, Penelope does look a little Hispanic to you. Oh, Penelope, does Dee look Hispanic to you? Her shrill laughter could have shattered crystal.
Oh
Oh,
my.
that she must have one of those really high pitched, you know,
Yeah, one of them.
Barbie, squeaky Barbie laughs.
Mm-hmm.
What does that even mean? Look Hispanic. You're so funny, Lydia. Lydia was laughing too, but for entirely different reasons. Goodness, Penelope carefully wiped invisible tears from her eyes. But tell me, what's the story? The story? Oh, come on. You're always so private about Dee's father and yourself. We hardly know anything about you. She was leaning in too close. Spill it. I won't tell. Lydia ran a quick P and L in her head. The prophet of Dee's underdetermined heritage, making the mothers cringe with the anxiety of every time they said anything mildly racist versus the loss of having to participate in the PTO fundraiser. It was a difficult choice. Their mild racism was legendary. Come on, Penelope urged, sensing weakness. Well, Lydia took a deep breath and she prepared to sing the hokey pokey of her life story, where she pulled a lie, put the truth in and pulled a lie out, and added some embellishment and shook it all about. That was
Mm-hmm.
cute. Well, Lydia, Lydia took a deep breath and she prepared to sing the hokey pokey of her life story, where she put the truth in and she pulled the lie out, and then she embellished a little and shook it all about.
Oh
Get
yeah,
it?
I get it. Let's go.
I'm from Athens, Georgia, where my Juan Valdez mustache may have fooled you. Because her lip is still red.
Yeah, with the rash.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Dee's, Dee's father, Lloyd, was from South Dakota and South Mississippi, but Dakota sounded less trashy, where he was adopted by his stepfather, who only married his mother so she couldn't be compelled to testify against him. Lloyd's father died in prison. Lloyd was was on his way to Mexico to tell his grandparents to pick up 20 kilos of cocaine.
Oh.
His car was hit by a truck. He was found dead in the truck, stopped after trying to snort in the truck, stopped after trying to snort a half a brick of coke up his nose. It happened fast. He choked to death in his own vomit. Dee never got to meet him, which is why it's the best gift I have ever gave my daughter. The end. Lydia. Penelope's hand was over her mouth. I had no idea. Lydia wondered how long that story would take to circulate. Lydia Delgado, tragic widow. Get it? The tragic widow.
Oh yeah.
What about Lloyd's mother? Cancer. Shot in the face by her pimp.
Oh.
There's no one left on that side who isn't in prison. Poor things. Penelope patted her hand over her heart. Oh, Dee never said anything. She knows all the details except the parts that would give her nightmares. Penelope looked out at the basketball court. No wonder you're so protective. She's all you have left of her father. True, unless you count the herpes. I was
Oh.
pregnant with Dee when he died, white knuckling the detox because I knew that they would take her away from me if they found drugs in my system. I was lucky to have her. Dee is the one who saved my life. Oh, honey. Penelope grabbed Lydia's hand, and Lydia's heart sank, and she realized that it had all been in vain. The story had obviously moved Penelope, or at least interested her, but she had come with a task, and the task was going to be assigned. But look, it's still part of Dee's heritage, right? I mean, step families are still families. 31 kids at this school are all adopted, but they still belong. Lydia took a millisecond to process that statement. 31. As in exactly 31? I know. Penelope took her stock at face value. The Harris twins just got into preschool with their legacies. Uh, she lowered her voice. Lies carry legacies. Oh, if I believe the rumor. Lydia opened her mouth and closed it. Anyway, Penelope blasted another smile and stood up. I'll pause right there for a minute. What do you think?
This is interesting. Like, oh my, oh me. It's like, where's it gonna go? Where's it gonna? It's very intriguing. It's like it keeps you going. I'm enjoying the crap out of it. I
Oh
don't
my
know.
goodness, it's crazy.
Freaking something.
Goodness. James, how you doing, James, buddy? Cheers. Silent Dragon's still in the house. Woo woo. Is he still at work? He must be at work.
Yes, for now.
3, 4, 5, 6. It's almost 6 a.m.
Dang, I didn't even look at the time. I'm sitting here just listening to the well, I about said movie, but to the book. That's amazing. You should do these. You do really well with it.
I stutter a little bit, like, like, yeah.
Well, I think the more you do it, the more you're going to get better at it, and the more you're going to enjoy it along with the crowd. I mean, honestly, you're doing really well
Well, thank you.
with my doing this. Really, yeah, you know. But yeah, you're doing awesome, for real, for real.
You're a rock star. Thanks for hanging out with me. I appreciate it. You're great. Trolling alert. Welcome in, trolling alert. Oops. Okay, where did I leave off? Oh, where she stood up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Penelope blasted another smile as she stood up. Just run the recipes by me first, okay? I know you like D to take special skill projects. You're so lucky. Mom and daughter cooking together in the kitchen. Fun. Lydia held her tongue. The only things that she and Dee did together in the kitchen was argue about when the mayonnaise jar was left empty enough when it was left empty long enough to be thrown away. When the mayonnaise jar was empty enough to be thrown away. So I guess they would like argue about that. Silly. Thanks for volunteering. Penelope jogged up to the bleachers, pumping her arms with the Olympic vigor. Linda wondered how long it would take for Penelope to tell the other mothers about the tragic death of Lloyd Delgado. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, get to know is still here. Thank you, baby. Her father always said that the price of hearing gossip was having someone else's gossip about you. She wished that she were still alive. She wished that he were still alive so she could tell him about the mothers. He would have wet himself with laughter. Coach Henley blew the whistle, indicating that the girls should wind down their warm-up drills. The word special skilled projects kept rolling around in Lydia's head. So here was the confirmation that the mothers had noticed. Lydia would not feel bad for making her daughter take a basic car maintenance class so that she would know how to change a flat tire, nor did she regret making her make D enroll in self-defense courses over the summer, even if it meant that she would miss basketball camp. On insisting that D practice how to scream when she was scared because D had a habit of freezing up when she was frightened. And most of us do, like I do. I freeze when I'm scared. And being silent was the worst thing you could possibly do if a man was in front of you who meant to do harm to you. Lydia bet that right now Anna Kilpatrick's mother was wishing she had taught her daughter how to change a flat tire. Now, Anna Kilpatrick is the young girl that is missing.
Right.
The girl's car was found at the mall parking lot with a nail in the front tire. It wasn't a big leap to think that the person who had driven the nail in was the same person who had abducted her. Coach Henley had given the whistle 2 short blasts. Yeah. Beep, beep. I guess. I don't know. To get the team moving, the Westerly women ambled over and formed half a circle. The mothers stomped their feet on the bleachers, trying to build the excitement for the game that would unfold with the same painful drama as the Mimi funeral. The opposing team hadn't even bothered to warm up. Their shortest player was 6 feet. Their shortest player was 6 feet tall and had hands the size of a dinner plate. Ooh,
Jeez.
that's a big girl. Oh, some big paws. The gym doors opened. Lydia saw Rick scan the crowd, and then he saw her. And then he looked at the opposing side's empty bleachers. She held her breath as like, he considered, sitting with her or going to the empty side. Then she let it out as he made his way towards her. He slowly climbed the bleachers. People who worked for a living didn't tend to sprint up bleachers. He sat down beside Lydia with a groan and says, "Hey." Rick picked up the empty bag of chips, leaned back his head, and let the crumbs fall into his mouth. Most of them went down his shirt into his collar. Lydia laughed because it was hard to hate someone who was laughing. He gave her a weary look. He knew her tactics. Rick Butler was nothing like the fathers at Westerly. For one, he had worked with his hands. He was a mechanic at a gas station and still pumped gas for some of their elderly customers. The muscles in his arms and chest came from lifting tires into rims. The ponytail down his back came from not listening to two women in his life who desperately wanted it gone. So he had like one of those mullet ponytail
Oh
things.
no.
Get to Know has a really long, he has like really long hair. I had no idea. One day I was like, whoa. Yeah, that's really cool. He has longer hair than me, I think. He was rather a redneck or a hippie, depending on what kind of mood he was in. That she loved him in both incarcerations and had incarceration and had been surprised of Lydia Delgado's life. He handed back the empty bag. There were specks of potato chips on his beard. Nice stash. She touched her fingers to her raw upper lip. Are we still fighting? Are you still being grumpy? My instincts tell me yes. She admitted, but she hated that they were mad at each other. I feel like my whole world is upside down. The buzzer sounded. They both winced as the game started, praying the humiliation would be brief. Miraculously, the Westerly women managed to get the tip off. Even more miraculously, Dee was dribbling the ball down the court. Rick yelled, "Go, Delgado!" Dee obviously saw the looming shadows of the three giant girls behind her. There was no there was there was no one to pass it to. She blindly havened the ball towards the basket, only to watch it bounce off the backboard and drop into the empty bleachers on the other side of the gym. Lydia felt Rick's finger pinky. Rick Lydia felt Rick's pinky finger stroke her pinky finger. Aw, that's cute.
Hmm.
He asked, "How did she get so amazing?" The Wheaties. Lydia could barely get a word out. Her heart always swelled when she saw how much Rick loved her daughter. She could forgive the ponytail for that long. "I'm sorry I've been such a bitch lately," she amended. "I mean, for the last decade. I'm sure you were bitchy before that." "I was a lot more fun." He raised his eyebrows. They had met had 12 steps meetings 13 years ago. So I guess they had met like in like an NA or AA or something. Neither
Gotcha.
one of neither one of them had a lot of fun. Had been a lot of fun. "I was thinner," she tried. "I was thinner," she cried. "Sure, that's what matters, Rick." Rick's eyes were on the game. "What's gotten into you, babe? Every time I open my mouth lately, you howl like a scolded dog. Aren't you glad we're not living together? We're gonna have to fight. We are gonna have to fight again." She almost started to mutter the words, but why do we live together when we live right next door to each other? We're right on the tip was oh we live right next door to each other was right on the tip of her tongue. The effort didn't go unnoticed. Nice to see that you can't keep your mouth shut when you really want to. He whistled as Dee tried for the 3 points. The ball missed, but he still gave her a thumbs up when she glanced his way. So I wonder if that's like her stepdad.
Possibly. Maybe. Maybe it's too early to tell yet.
I don't know.
Mm.
Lydia was tempted to tell him that Dee wouldn't give a rat's ass about his approval if they lived together, but decided to save it for the next time that they were yelling at each other.
Hmm.
I guess they fight a lot.
Sounds like
Rick,
it.
right? Rick sighed as the opposing team got the ball. Oh Lord, here we go. The dinner plate girl was blocking Dee. She didn't even have the decency to raise her arms. Rick sat back against the bleachers, his boots rested on the seat in front of him. There were oil stains on the cracks on the brown leather. His jeans had grease spots. He smelled faintly of engine exhaust. He had kind eyes. He loved her daughter. He loved animals, even squirrels, like Inky. Yeah. He had read every book Danielle Steele had ever written because he got hooked on them in rehab. He didn't mind that most of Lydia's clothes were covered in dog hair, or that her only regret about their sex life was that she couldn't do it wearing a burqa. This sounds like kinky. Oh my goodness. Okay. She asked, "What do I need to do? Tell me what's going on in that crazy head of yours." I did tell you. I'd tell you, but then I'd have to kill you. He thought it over for a moment. All right, just don't mess up my face. Lydia stared at the scoreboard. 10 to 0. She blinked. 12 to 0. Oh, I don't know. She didn't know what to say, what she needed to say. It's just history coming back on me. That sounded like a country song. He looked at her in the eye. Anna Kilpatrick. Lydia chewed her lip. He wasn't asking a question. He was giving an answer. He had seen all the clippings. She kept she He had seen all the clippings she had kept on Anna Kilpatrick's disappearance, the way Lydia's eyes filled with tears whenever the girl's parents were on the news. He said, "I heard the police found a new clue. All that you can do is hope they find the body. She
Mm.
might be alive. Optimism is a silver glass in your heart." That from another song from my father? He smiled at her. She loved the way that the lines around his eyes crinkled. "Babe, I know I've asked you to stay away from the news, but I think you should know something." Rick wasn't smiling anymore. She felt her heart lurch in her chest. "Is she dead?" Lydia put her hand on her throat. Did 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 they find Anna?" "No, I would have told you right off. You know that." She didn't know that, but her heart was still racing. "I saw it in the crime blotter this morning." Rick was visibly reluctant, but he pushed on it. "It happened 3 days ago. Paul Scott, the architect, the architect who married Claire Scott, they were downtown and they got robbed. Paul took the wrong end of the knife and died before they got him to the hospital. The funeral's tomorrow." The mothers erupted into another round of cheering and clapping. Dee had somehow managed to get the ball again. Lydia watched her daughter sprint down the court. Dinner plate hands snatched away the ball. Dee didn't give up. She chased after the girl. She was fearless. She was fearless in every aspect of her life. And why wouldn't she be? No one's ever slapped her down. Life hadn't had a chance to hurt her. She had never lost anyone. She had never known the sorrow of having someone taken away. Rick asked, "You going to say something?" Lydia had a lot to say, but she wasn't going to let Rick see that side of her, that angry, brutal side. The anesthetized, anesthetized with Coke. And when Coke was too much, she pushed it down with food. "Liddy," she shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I just hope he suffered."
Okay.
So she's hoping the guy that just died, Paul,
Mm-hmm.
suffered.
Yep. Oh wow.
Isn't that weird?
That is. Hmm.
Why? I mean,
That's what I was about to ask. Why?
I know why, but I can't tell you why.
Mm-mm. Just gotta
We're,
stay tuned and find out, eh?
we're already on page 31.
Wow. Oh, wait.
That
That's
crazy?
amazing.
Mm, I gotta move my heater. Yankees, it'll pause the cold. Oh yeah. Feel the heat. Okay. Ready?
Uh-huh.
It's your birthday today. The fourth birthday that had passed without you, as usual. So this is like the second eye. Like this is like giving scenery, like time period.
Gotcha.
Um, I think these are like little inserts, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah,
maybe like the mom talking to the daughter or something, you know.
right.
Okay. It's your birthday today. The fourth birthday has passed without you. As usual, I set aside time to go through our family photos and let all of the memories wash over me. I only allow myself this pleasure once a year because doiling out these precious moments is what gets me through the countless and endless days without you. My favorite photograph from your first birthday, your mother and I were far more excited. Oh, this is her. I think this is Lydia talking.
Mm,
I don't know. I don't know. I think maybe she knew her.
possibly.
Look at Silent Dragon. Looks like he's over there chewing his nails. Than you were, though you were generally a happy baby. To you, this birthday is just another day. Nothing remarkable except the cake, which you immediately destroyed with your fists. There were only two of us on the guest list. Your mother said it was silly to publicly mark an event that you would never remember. I readily agreed because I was selfish and because I was never happier than when I had my girls all to myself. I timed myself as the memories ebbed and flowed. 2 hours, no more, no less. Then I carefully placed the picture back into the box, closed the lid, and put them on the shelf for next year. Next, as in my routine, I walked to the sheriff's office. I stopped returning call returning he stopped returning my calls long ago. I could see the dread in his eyes when he saw me through the glass partition. I am his challenger. I am his failure. I am his pathetic pain in the ass who won't accept the truth that his daughter walked away. Our first birthday without you. I went to the sheriff's office and calmly requested to read all of the files pertaining to your case. He refused. I threatened to call the newspaper. He told me to go ahead. I went to the payphone in the lobby. I slotted in a quarter and he came over and hung up the phone and told me to follow him back into the squad room. We performed the same Quebecy theater year after year until finally this year he gave up without a fight. A deputy led me to the small interrogation room where they had laid out copies of all the files pertaining to the investigation. He offered me a glass of water, but then I pointed to my lunchbox and the thermos and told him I was fine. There's no clear narrative to a police report. There is no clear narrative to a police report. Your file has no beginning, no middle, and no end. There's just summaries of witnesses' statements, most of their names unhelpfully blacked out, handwritten notes from detectives that use language I have yet to master, statements that have proven to be false and other suspects to be false. Again, blacked out. Statements that have been proven to be true. Everybody lies to some degree when questioned by the police. The interview notes were paltry list of suspects. Yes, their names are all blacked out like all the others. Two different types of maps have been taped together, one showing downtown, the other showing the campus, so that the last known footsteps can be traced across town. There are also photographs of the dorm room with favorite clothes accounted for and toiletries mysteriously gone, textbooks abandoned, reports have half finished, and missing cycles, though it was later found. The first sheet of paper in your file was the same sheet of paper I saw on the first anniversary of your birthday when the second and third and fourth and case pending until further leads. Your mother would have used a red pen to correct the word to further, but I take craven pleasure in knowing that all of the very first pages, they are wrong. This is whether it was like on a Monday, March 4th, 1991. The high was 51 degrees and the low was 37. The skies were cloudless. There was no precipitation. The dew point was 34 degrees. Winds came out of the northwest at 16 miles per hour. There were 12 hours and 20 there were 12 hours and 23 minutes of visible daylight. There were some of the items in the news that week. The murder trial of Pamela Smart began. Rodney King was beaten by the members of the Los Angeles Police Department. And a United Airlines flight went down near Colorado Springs. President Bush declared the Iraq war was over, and you disappeared. Here are the sheriff's explanations for what he thinks. You left us. You were angry with us because you just didn't want to live off campus. You were furious that you did not want to drive to Atlanta for the concert. You had been arguing with your sister about the province of the Straw Hat. You had stopped speaking to your grandmother because she had implied that you were gaining weight. The sheriff had no children of his own. He does not understand that these high states of emotion are simply byproduct of being a 19-year-old young woman. These disagreements were such a minor storm in our family ecosystem that at the start of the investigation, we failed to mention even one of them, which is to think his thinking meant that we were trying to hide something. In fairness, you were no stranger to the police. You had been arrested twice before. The first time was when you were caught in a secure lab at the university protesting the research of genetically modified organisms. The second time was when you were caught smoking pot in the back of a wuxery, the record store which your friend Sally worked. Here are the so-called clues the sheriff cites to support his runaway theory. So the sheriff, I guess, assumed that the girl is just a runaway, not truly like nothing happened to her. Like she's still alive. She's just a runaway.
Right. Missing in action.
Yeah. Your toothbrush and hairbrush were gone. Or maybe you'd accidentally left them in the camisole somewhere. Oh, sorry. Maybe you had left them in the communal shower. A small leather satchel was missing from your roommate's closet, or maybe she had let a friend use it for her spring break. Some of your clothes seemed to be missing or borrowed without your permission. Most damningly, you had left an unfinished love letter on your desk. Kiss you in Paris, hold your hand in Rome. Here, said the sheriff, was proof that you were planning to leave. Here, said your sister, was proof that you were writing music. Review on Madonna's Justify My Love. Oh, I like that song. Okay. Sorry, squirrel.
Okay.
There was a boy, though any father of a teenage girl can tell you that there is always a boy. He had ruffled hair and rolled his own cigarettes and talked about his feelings far too much for comfort. You were interested in him, which meant you weren't really dating yet. There were notes being passed back and forth, records of late night phone calls, soulful mixtapes delivered. You were both so young. This was the beginning of something that might have led to everything or nothing at all. To answer the obvious question is the boy was camping with his family when you were taken. He had an airtight alibi. The park ranger had seen him with family, and the man had stopped by their campsite to warn them that a coyote had been sighted in the area. He sat with his family by the fire and discussed football with the father because the boy was not a fan. He sat with his family by the fire and discussed football with the father because the boy was not a fan. That doesn't make any sense. The park ranger's contribution to the case did not stop there. He offered the sheriff a possible explanation, an explanation that the sheriff later presented as fact. The same week, the ranger had came across a band of stragglers camping in the woods. He had been moving around the state for a while. They dressed in dark clothing. They cooked they cooked their meals on an open fire. Ooh, that would be fun. They walked down country roads with their hands clasped behind their back and their heads down. Drugs were involved because these sorts of characters, drugs are always involved. Some called them a cult. Others said they were just homeless. Many said that they were runaways. Most of them called them a nuisance. You, my sweet girl, were heard by many were heard by many of your friends and sympathetically referred to as a free spirit, which is why the sheriff assumed that, lacking the other leads, you simply ran off to join them. You volunteered at the homeless shelter, and you drank alcohol even though you were underage, and you were caught smoking pot in it, so it only made sense. By the time the runaway theory became cemented in the sheriff's mind, the group of stragglers, that stragglers, the cult, the free spirits, whatever they were called, had moved on. They were eventually located in North Carolina, too stoned, too disbanded to say who had been who had been and who had been among them. She looks very familiar, one of the few remaining original members had written in his statements, but we all have eyes and noses and teeth, so it doesn't really mean everybody looks familiar. So why do we know that you were abducted? You were mad at your mother, but you still came home the day before to talk to her in the kitchen while you did your laundry. You were furious with your sister, but you still let her borrow your yellow scarf. You despised your grandmother, but you still left a card to be mailed to the following week for her birthday. While this is not entirely out of the realm of possibility that you would run into the woods and jump in a group of aimless wandering vagabonds, it is completely impossible that you would ever do so without telling us first. That is why we know you did what you did on that day that you were taken. At 7:30 on that morning of March 4th, you joined some friends from the homeless shelter and went to a hot corner to pass out. Food and blankets at 9:48 a.m. Carlene Looper, the desk monitor at Lipscomb Hall, was on duty and recorded your return to the dorm. Your roommate, Nancy Griggs, left for the pottery lab at 10:15 a.m. She said that you were tired and had gone back to bed. Your English professor remembers you from his noon workshop. He offered some of his editorial suggestions on his Spencer paper. He recalls a lively discussion. He was later ruled out as a suspect that evening. He was teaching a class on the other side of campus. Around 1 p.m., you went to the Tate Student Center, where you ate a grilled cheese sandwich and a salad that you shared with Veronica Voorhees. The next part of this, the next part is less specific, but based on interviews. The sheriff managed to put together a likely list of your activities. At some point, you dropped by the red and black offices to deliver your story on UGAs, the attempt to privatize meal services. You returned to the student center and played some games of pool with a boy named Ezekiel Maine. You sat on a tweed couch in the lounge with another boy named David Conford. He told you that he had heard Michael Stipe, the lead singer of REM, would be at the Manhattan Cafe that night. Friends in the vicinity claimed that Comfort had asked you to go with him, but he insists that he did not ask you out on a date. We were just friends. The deputy who interviewed him made a note that the boy had obviously wanted to be more. Witness placed both Mann and Comfort in the student center later that evening. On or around 4:30 p.m. that afternoon, you left the Tate. You walked home, leaving your bike outside the student center, likely because it was getting colder and you didn't want to freeze going down Baxter Hill. 2 weeks later, the bike was found chained to the rack outside the center. According to the desk monitor, by 5 p.m., you were back in the dorm room. Your roommate Nancy recalls your excitement when you told her that Michael Stipe was going to be at Manhattan. Excuse me. You both decided that you would get the group together and you would go later that night. You were all underage, but you knew that John McAllister, a townie who had worked the front door from the high school, knew the front, blah, 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 blah. John McAllister, the townie who had worked at the front door from the high school. Nancy made several calls to friends. The meeting of a time of 9:30 p.m. was arranged. Since your psych professor had scheduled an exam for the spring break, you and Nancy went to the North Library to study around 8:30. You were both seen at the taco stand, a restaurant catty corner from the black iron arch that stands in front of the main entrance. You took your food back to Lipscomb Hall. You entered through the back door, which was propped open so that night desk monitor, a woman named Beth Tyndall, did not record your entry. Upstairs, you and Nancy showered and dressed for the evening. You were wearing a saddle loafers, black jeans, and a man's white button-up shirt, an embroidered silver and gold vest. You had silver bangles on your wrist and a locket that belonged to your sister around your neck. Later, Nancy could not recall whether or not you bought it back from the communal showers, where the wire basket would to keep your toiletries. They were not found in your dorm room. Nancy mentions in one of her statements that the abandoned items in the bathroom were generally either stolen or thrown away. At 9:30 p.m., you met your friends at Manhattan Cafe, where you were told that Michael Stipe's rumor was where you were told the Michael Stipe rumor was false. Someone mentioned that the band was touring in Asia. Someone else said that they were in California. They were all over. There was an all over sense of disappointment, but it was agreed that you might as well stayed for drinks. It was Monday night, and everybody but you had class that next day for a fact that later worked to your disadvantage because Nancy assumed that you had gone home to finish your laundry and assumed that you were at school. The first round of Pabst Blue Ribbon, which the Manhattan served for $1 each. At some point later, you were seen holding a Moscow Mule. What the heck is a Moscow Mule?
I have no clue.
Oh, a Moscow Mule, a cocktail that sold for $4.50 and featured vodka,
Oh,
Blenheim ginger ale, and lime.
yeah.
Ugh, doesn't sound very good. Nancy Griggs indicated that the man must have purchased the drink because all of the girls had a habit of asking for the expensive cocktails whenever a man was paying. A song that you liked came on the jukebox and you started dancing. Someone said that the song was CNC Music Factory. Others said that it was Lisa Lisa. Regardless, your enthusiasm was contagious. Soon the little floor space there was in the club was taken up with dancers. That night, there was no particular boy that you seemed to favor. All of your friends told the sheriff that you had danced because you loved dancing, not because that you were trying to attract men. So you weren't an evil temptress. So you weren't at all an evil temptress. Though the sheriff tried his best to make that part of your story. At exactly 10:38 p.m., you told Nancy that you had a headache and you were going to return to the dorm. She knew this was the time because she looked at her watch. She had asked you to stay until 11. At which point you could walk back to the dorm together. You told her that you couldn't wait that long. That you tried to be quiet for her to try to be quiet when she got in. The sheriff must have asked Nancy about her level of intoxication because he writes in his notes, Nancy said you were not showering a high level. Oh, we're not showing a high level of intoxication, but you kept yawning and you seemed unfocused. The last sentence in Nancy's signed statement simply reads, after 10:38 p.m., I never saw her again. No one saw you after that. At least no one who didn't mean you harm. Nancy's last sentence is on the last page of your file. There is nothing more we know. As the sheriff might say, we don't have anything further. Here is something that the sheriff does not know and that your mother refuses to believe. I remember looking at the watch at night. It was a few minutes later, closer to 11, most likely at the time that you were taken. We were having a late dinner at Harry Bissett's Grill on Broadway, roughly 5 blocks away from the Manhattan. Your mother was downstairs using the restroom. The waiter offered to bring the check. I looked at my watch, and that's when I noted the time. Your little sister was home studying with a friend, but she was old enough to put herself to bed. So I decided to order your mother's favorite dessert. I remember watching her walk back up the stairs. I couldn't stop smiling because your mother was particularly beautiful that night. Her hair was pulled back. She was wearing a white cotton dress that curved around her hips. Her skin glowed. There was so much life in her eyes. When she smiled at me, I felt like an explosion had gone off inside of my heart. I could not possibly love more than I loved her in that moment. My wife, my friend, my woman who had given me so much kind, thoughtful, beautiful children. She sat across from me at the table. I looked I looked both her hands in mine. I took both her hands in mine. Why are you smiling? She asked. I kissed the inside of her wrist and I answered what I felt at that moment. And I felt at that moment was the absolute truth because everything is perfect. That is what I know. That what I am is a fool. Poof.
Hmm.
Farm sim freak. Good to see you, love.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Should I stop there? We're
Y-
on
who-
chapter 3. Oh my God.
I mean, it's your call. Whatever you want to do. Now, granted, I may keep my mic muted for a while because everybody's getting ready for school. But it's okay. It's up to you. I find this very intriguing.
How long have we been on? 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about an hour a chapter.
I tell you what, I've not lost any interest in it at all. I've just been glued. So, yeah.
So so chapter 3 goes back to Claire Scott and talking about her, her husband passing away.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe we'll do one more. We'll see if it's a cliffhanger. Let me see.
Okay.
Let me read through it real quick. Let's see. Maybe we'll leave off there. Wait, let me go down to the end. Dang, that's a lot of pages.
I guess the question is when's the next reading?
Tomorrow.
Okay.
I don't know. Let's see. Does everybody? Well, we have 3 of us in here. Let's see. Oh my gosh, that was a lot of pages. That's like 20 pages.
Yeah, but you got really good at this. So
Okay, one more.
all right.
I've found a warm, happy place.
Okay.
As long as you're up for it. If you're up
I'm
for it,
I'm fine.
you can say no.
Who, me?
Hmm.
No, heck, I'm fine. I am perfectly fine. Like I said, I might have to keep my mic muted for just a little bit because I got people running around, dogs are jumping and barking, so I'm perfectly fine with it. I'm loving it. And it ain't McDonald's either, okay?
He made it funny.
I did, didn't I? Oh my.
For
That
those
is
of
great.
you who are watching, if you have not yet, don't forget to smash that like button. I think my phone died. Yeah,
For real, for
it
real.
did. Okay. Chapter 3. This is the last one, I promise, for today.
Let's go.
Did my puppy dog come back out here? Chapter 3. She had just buried her husband. Claire kept repeating the words in her head as if they were narrating a story rather than experiencing the event in her actual life. Claire Scott had just buried her husband. Wasn't gonna smoke. I'll put that back out. I've done so good today. There was there was more because the services had been long, with many moving parts. Claire recalled with the cold narrator's eye. The casket was gunmetal gray with a blanket of white lilies covering the closed lid. The smell of wet earth was pungent as the machine lowered oof, his body into the grave. Claire's knees went weak. Her grandmother stroked her back. Her mother offered her arm. Claire shook her head. She thought of strong things, iron, steel. Paul, it was not until they were climbing in. Paul, like I guess of iron and steel, because he's the one that always like protected her and saved her and stuff.
Right. Right.
Yeah. It was not until they were climbing into the back of the black limousine that Claire truly understood that she would never see her husband again. Oh. She was going home, back to their home that they had shared, people that they would meet here, there, parking their cars along their curving driveway and spilling it into the street. The driveway, I guess, spills into the street.
Right.
They would make their toast. They would tell their stories in his will. Paul had requested a wake. Through Claire, though Claire had been too hung up on the devastation, she asked herself, wake as in maybe Paul will wake up, wake as in disturbed trail of water left behind the boat. Uh, Claire felt second wake made the most sense. The calm had been disturbed. She was trapped in the turbulent waters, swimming against the grief and drowning in sympathy. There had been so many people, there had been so many phone calls and cards and flower arrangements and notices of donations that had been made in Paul's name. Architecture of Humanity, Habitat for Humanity, and the Cancer Society. Though Paul did not die of cancer, there was a charity for murder victims. Surely this was something Claire's should have looked into. Was it too late? 4 days he had passed since the awful night. The funeral was over. People people she hadn't ever seen or heard from in years had already sent their respects. They keep telling her that she was in their thoughts and that Paul was a good man and that they were there for her. Claire nodded when they said this. At the police station, at the hospital, at the funeral home, at the grave service, though she wasn't quite sure that where there she where there was.
Oh
Sorry,
my.
I must be getting tired.
No, you're fine. You're doing well.
Um, wasn't quite sure where there was. How are you holding up? They asked. How are you feeling? Disembodied. That was the word that best described Claire's feelings. She had looked up definitions for her from her iPad last night to make sure that she had it right. Exiting without separating from the body, lacking any obvious physical source. Again, the second definition fit best because Paul had been her physical source. He had given weight to her life, tied her down to the world when her natural inclination had always been to float above everything as if it were happening to someone else. She had felt this intense embodiment for the last 4 days, really from the moment that the snake man had told them to turn around. And goes back to, when they were, in the alleyway and they got mugged.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
then
Right.
and then the police's undertaking, asking if she wanted to see the body one last time, and Claire blanching at the word body and sobbing like a child because she had spent every single second since they had taken Paul from her arms trying to remove the image of her lifeless, murdered husband from her mind. Scott, Claire Scott wanted to see her husband again. Man, I don't know. I guess I would too. You know,
Yeah.
she did not want to see his body. She stared out the window. See, I think I would want to.
Well, I guess it just depends, doesn't it? Maybe.
Yeah. I guess it depends on how mangled, you know,
Right.
like how badly he was injured,
Yeah.
like
He's exactly. Yeah. And
um, I don't know. She stared out the window. They were inching forward in the dense Atlanta traffic. The funeral procession had been truncated 2 lights back. I guess that means blocked off. Only their limo stayed out ahead. This wasn't like the country where strangers respectfully pulled over to the side of the
Hmm.
road to let mourners pass. They ignored the police officers riding ahead on their motorcycles and ignoring the yellow funeral flags that people had stuck on their cars. They ignored everyone but Claire, who felt like the world was staring into the back of the car, trying to catch a glimpse of her grief. She struggled to remember the last time that she had ridden in a stretch limousine. Certainly, decades had passed since she rode in any type of car with both her mother and her grandmother. The last limo ride must have been the trip to the airport with Paul. The car services had given them an upgrade from the usual sedan. We were going to the prom, Paul had asked. Are we going to the prom? Paul had asked. Aw. So maybe they
Lord,
went to the prom in a limousine.
that's possible. Hmm.
They had been on their way to Munich for an architectural conference. Paul had booked them into the Kempsky for 6 blissful days. Claire swam laps in the pool, had massages and facials, ordered room service, and shopped alongside wealthy Middle Eastern wives whose husbands were in Germany for healthcare. Paul would join her in the evenings for dinners and late night strolls. If she thought about it hard enough, she could remember what it felt like to hold his hand. Oh my God, I'm dying over here. As they passed the darkness of the windows in the closed shops, she would never hold his hand again. She would roll over in bed and rest her head on his chest. She would never see him come down for breakfast wearing his god awful velour shorts that she hated. She would never spend her Saturdays on the couch with him, reading while he watched football games or going to another corporate dinner party, going to a wine tasting or a golf tournament. And even if she did, she would have been at a point of Paul wasn't there to laugh with her about it. Claire opened her mouth for air. She felt as though if she was suffocated in the closed limo. She rolled down the window and took a great gulp of cold air. And then, while then, her mother said she was sitting across from Claire. We'll be there soon. Her hand was wrapped around the liquor decanters in the side of in the side console because the sound of the rattling glass was the per- proverbial fingernails on the blackboard. Oh, the glass clanking. It's like Her grandmother Guinea buttoned up her coat but said nothing about the cold. Claire rolled up the window. She was sweating. Her lungs felt shaky. She couldn't think beyond the next few hours. There were going to be over 100 people. There were going to be over 100 people at the house. Paul's partners at the firm, Adam Quinn, had turned to the guest list for the wake and the corporate events for Quinn, plus Scott. He had turned in the guest list for the wake into a corporate event for Quinn and Scott. A U.S. congressman, several captains of the industry and their trophy wives, a handful of hedge fund managers, bankers, restaurateurs, and real estate developers, and countless blowhards Claire had never met before and frankly had never wanted to. So I guess she wasn't into the highfalutin lifestyle type of
Yeah,
people,
I'd say not.
you know.
Kind of that's what it sounds like to me.
hmm Welcome in, clowns. Good to see you. Thank you for swinging by. Thank you for swimming by, Gemini guy. Tony Ferris is back. They lived in Dunwoody, a suburb just outside of Atlanta. The lot had a gentle slope as its crest had been a small cottage with a tire swing in the backyard. Oh, how adorable. Paul had designed their home from the ground up. He knew that where every nail and every screw was, he He could tell you where every single wire led and what was supposed to be in control and what it was supposed to control. Claire's contribution to the infrastructure had been given to Paul, a label maker, because he had loved labeling things. He had been like a herald with his purple crayon. The modem said modem. The router said router. The cutoff for the water supply had a giant labeled tag. Every appliance had a label telling the date that it had been installed. There was laminating checklists for everything from winterizing the outdoor spigots to troubleshooting the AV system, which was more closely resembled a NASA control board.
Oh my. Oh me.
Oh, you are amazing.
Yes, they are.
Your phone what? Updated. Oh,
Oh.
oh, I'm sorry. Oh, it's okay. Okay, where was I? Gosh darn it.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
oh my gosh. Oh, there it is. I left that NASA control board. It says managing the house was arguably a part-time job. Every January, Paul gave Claire a list of contractors she could set up with an annual appointments for maintenance on the generator, the geothermal units and garage doors, copper gutters, the composite roof, and the irrigation system, as well as the irrigation system to the outdoor lighting, the elevator. They have an elevator, the gym equipment and the pool equipment and the security system. It must be a pretty big house. I'm just saying, has a damn elevator.
Yeah, it don't sound small at all, does it?
No.
No.
And those were just tasks that she could recite off the top of her head. January was less than 2 months away. Who was she supposed to call? He's not around. He's gone. He's gone. Claire always threw away the list after the last workman left. Uh-oh. She better go dig them out of the trash. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Stringer, welcome in, love. Mwah. Would she even know how to find it?
I doubt it.
Did Paul leave it in a file somewhere? Her hands started shaking. Tears filled her eyes. She was overwhelmed by all the things that she did not know that she needed to do. Her mother asked. Claire wiped away her tears. She tried to logic down the panic. January was next year. The wake was right now. Claire didn't have to be told how to throw a get together. The caterers would have arrived in an hour ago. The wine and liquor had been delivered this morning. As Claire had gotten dressed for the funeral, the gardeners were already out in the yard with their leaf blowers. The pool had been cleaned yesterday evening while the tables and chairs had been being unloaded. There was 2 bartenders and 6 servers, black-eyed pea cakes with shrimp, zucchini and corn fritters. Sounds yummy. Burgundy beet risotto tarts, lemon spiced chicken with dilled cucumbers, pigs in the blanket with mustard.
Okay.
Which Claire always threw in as a joke, but was invariably the first thing that the caterers ran of because everyone loved them tiny hot dogs. I always thought pigs in a blanket was sausage and pancakes.
All right. Well, see, there's like a breakfast pigs in a blanket, and then there's like a dinner one. So, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I think you said it earlier today.
I
I
did.
didn't know that. Yeah.
Lord.
Her empty stomach soured at the thought of all that food. She stared blankly at the liquor decanters in the limo. Her mother's hand rested lightly on the stoppers. Her yellow sapphire ring was a gift from her second husband, an affable man who had quietly died of a heart attack 2 days after retiring from dental practice. Helen Reed was a 62-year-old, but she looked closer to Claire's age than her own. Helen claimed her good skin came from being a librarian for 40 years, which had kept her out of the sun. The fact that they were often mistaken for sisters had been bane of Claire's younger existence. Did you want a drink? Helen asked. Claire's mouth formed a reflexive no, but said yes. That's interesting. Trying to imagine that in my head.
Right, right. Mm-hmm.
Helen pulled out the scotch. Guinea? Claire's grandmother smiled. No, thank you, dear. Helen poured a generous double. Claire's hand shook as she took the glass. She had taken a Valium this morning, and when that didn't seem to work, she had taken some tramadol left over from the root canal that she probably shouldn't have put the alcohol on top of the pills, but Claire probably shouldn't have done a lot of things this week. She threw back the drink. Her mind flashed up the image of Paul throwing back his scotch in the restaurant 4 nights ago. She gagged on the liquor as it hit her stomach and it burned back up her throat. Goodness. Guinea patted Claire on the back. That's Grandma. Are you okay, dear? Claire winced as she swallowed. She felt a sharp pain in her cheek. There was a small rash of scraped skin from where her face had grazed the brick in the alleyway. Everyone assumed the injury had happened during the robbery, not before. Guinea said, When were you a little girl? I used to give you scotch and sugar for your cough. Do you remember that? Yes, I do. She smiled at Claire with genuine affection, which was something Claire could not get used to. Last year, the old woman had been diagnosed with something called pleasant dementia, which meant that she had forgotten all the perceived slights and neurotic obsessions that had made her such a nasty bitch.
Oh my.
Oh my. Queen is in the house. Miss Kaylee is up in the house. Love you, ladies. Yes, yes, yes. Wow. I guess dementia, she forgot that she used to be a nasty bitch.
How
Yeah.
could you forget that?
Yeah. And from what it says, she's like, she was a nasty bitch for the last 8 decades.
Oh Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Horrible.
She said the transformation had made everyone weary. They were constantly waiting for the old guinea to rise up like a phoenix.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
Helen told Claire that it was nice that your tennis team showed up. It was. Claire had been shocked that they had made such an appearance. The last time she had seen them, she was being shoved in the back of a police car. So Claire, remember in the beginning, she went into the police station, was arrested in her little tennis outfit with sneakers.
Yep.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
They were all dressed so impeccably. Grandma Guinea said, You have such lovely friends. Well, thank you, Claire said, though she wasn't sure whether they had attended Paul's funeral because they were still her friends or because they couldn't pass up the juicy social event. Their behavior at the cemetery had offered no clues to which was the truth. They had kissed Claire's cheek and hugged her and told her how sorry they were. And then they had wandered off for a while. Claire was greeting other mourners. She could hear them. She couldn't hear them, but she knew what they were doing, picking apart what everyone was wearing, gossiping about who was sleeping with who and who had found out who and what and where and when and how much divorce would cost. Claire had found herself having most of an out of body experience where she was floating like a ghost over the heads and heard them whispering, I heard Paul was drinking. Shh. Why were they in that alley? What did you think was going to happen in that part of town? Oh my God. Someone invariably would make the old joke. What do you call a woman in a black tennis dress? A Dunway widow.
Sounds
It's
about
funny,
right.
but not funny. Because he's backstage with me. He's just talking. He's like helping me narrate.
I'm just sitting here
Haley,
listening and enjoying the stream.
what kind of Wizard Oz crap is going on in her? I'm reading the book called Pretty Girls. Claire had been friends with these type of mean girls all of her life. She was pretty enough to be a leader, but she'd never been able to engender that type of fearless loyalty. It took up too it took a marshal a pack of she-wolves. Instead, she was quite the girl who laughed at all her jokes, straggled behind all of them at the mall, sat at the hump in the back of the seat of the car, and never, ever, ever let them know that she was secretly fucking their boyfriends.
Well, there it is.
There it is. OMG. Granny Guinea asked, "Which one were you charged with assaulting?" Claire shook her head to clear it. She's not there. It wasn't an assault. It was disorderly conduct. That's an important legal distinction. Grandma Guinea smiled pleasantly. Well, I'm sure she'll send you a card. Everyone loved Paul. Claire exchanged a look with her mother. Grandma Guinea had hated Paul. Oh, I guess she didn't like Paul. And she hated Claire with Paul even more. Guinea had been a young widow when she raised Claire's father on a paltry income from a secretarial job. She wore her struggles like a badge of honor. Claire's designer clothes and jewelry had big house issues, or big house, wait, jewelry and big houses and the pricey cars and luxury vacations had come as a personal afford to women who had survived the Great Depression. Oh, this is talking about the grandma. I was like, the
Right.
Great Depression. That was like way, way, way long time ago. Yeah. A world war death of a husband and a loss of 2 children and countless other hardships. Claire would vividly recall the time that she wore red Louboutins to visit her grandmother. Red shoes are for toddlers and whores, Guinea had equipped later. Oh, yeah. Grandma, I guess, wasn't into Louboutins. Louboutins.
Mm-hmm.
So the proper way to say that is Louis Boutins or Louboutins. It depends on what part of the country you're from, or part of the world you're from.
Okay.
Um, Later, when Claire had told Paul about the exchange, he joked, "Is it creepy that I'm fine with either?" Okay, so Grandma said red shoes are for toddlers and whores. And he goes,
Okay.
"Is it creepy that I'm fine with either?"
Oh my.
Yeah.
Well, creepy.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's a little creepy.
Yeah.
Claire put her empty glass back into the console. She stared out the window. She felt out of time and out of place. She momentarily didn't recognize the scenery, and then she realized that they were almost home. The word didn't seem to fit anymore. What was home without Paul? The first night she got in from the police station, the house seemed suddenly too big, too empty for just one person. Paul had wanted more. He had talked about children on their second date, their third date, and countless dates after that. He had told Claire about his parents, how wonderful they were, how they had been devastated when they died. Paul was 16 when Scott was killed in the car accident during a freak ice storm. He was only a child. The only relative he had left was an uncle who passed away while Paul was at Auburn. A husband that had made it clear that he had wanted a big family. He had wanted lots and lots of kids to inoculate himself against loss. And Claire had tried and tried and tried with him until she had finally agreed to go see a fertility expert who had informed Claire that she couldn't have children because she had an IUD and was taking birth control pills. Oh, why didn't she just get off of it? I'm just asking for a friend. Of course,
Right.
Claire didn't share that information with Paul. She had told her husband that the doctor diagnosed her with something called inhospitable womb. Well, yeah, with that stuff in there, it would be inhospitable. Hospitable. Just saying.
You got
Hospitable.
it.
Inhospitable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, Chad, if I can't keep up with you guys. Pineapple juice. I love you guys. You guys are freaking cool. Love you. Mwah. Okay. So she has his inhospitable womb. Then and then a pipe cleaner stuck in your uterus. Ow!
Oh, man.
Almost there, Helen said. She reached over and touched Claire's knee. We'll get through this, sweetheart. Claire grabbed her mother's hand. They both had tears in their eyes. They both looked away without acknowledging them. It's good you have a grave to visit. Guinea stared out the window with the pleasant smile on her face. There's no telling where my mind was. When your father died, I remember standing at his grave and thinking, this is a place where I can leave my grief. It wasn't immediate, of course, but it had to go somewhere. And every time I visit the cemetery, I feel like I've got to go get back into my car with a little tiny bit of grief gone. Helen's husband, invisible lint from her Helen brushed invisible lint from her skirt. Like when they're like, "Ugh," just, yeah.
I got you.
Claire tried to summon good memories of her father. She was in college when Helen called to say that he was dead. At the end of his life, her father had been very sad, very broken man. No one had been surprised when he had committed suicide. Grandma Guinea asked, what's that missing girl's name again? Oh man, they got to bring her back into this. Anna Kilpatrick. The limo slowed as it made the wide turn into the driveway. Helen shifted in her seat and looked out the front window. Is the gate that is supposed to open. I guess the caterers. Claire didn't finish the sentence. There were 3 police cars parked behind the caterer's van. Oh God, what now? Dear Lord Jesus.
Help me, Jesus.
Help me, Jesus. A policewoman motioned for the limo to park on the pad down from the main house. Helen turned to Claire. Have you done something? What? Claire couldn't believe the question, but then she thought about the Valium and the Tramadol and the Scotch and her and her heartless parole officer who said Claire's smart mouth was going to get her into trouble one day. To which Claire had told him that day had come and gone, or she wouldn't have had a parole officer. Would he really drug test her on the day of her husband's funeral? For the love of God, Ellen slid toward the door. Claire, do something about your expression. You look guilty as hell. I didn't do anything, Claire said, resurrecting the whiny tone that she had deployed since the 9th grade. Oh, that, baby talk. I guess it's baby talk.
Yeah.
I didn't do anything. Yeah.
Sure.
Let me handle this. Helen pushed open the door. Is there a problem, officer? She was using her librarian voice. Oh, sorry. I said that a little too loud. Is there a problem, officer? Using her low, terse, and highly annoyed. Oh, the librarian voice. Low, terse, and highly annoyed. The cop held out her hand. You need to step back, lady. This is private property. I know my rights. I'm sorry. Claire edged in front of her mother. No wonder she had a problem with authority. I'm Claire Scott. This is my house. Can I see some ID, please? Helen stamped her foot. Oh, for God's sakes. Are you really here with 3 policeman cars to arrest my daughter on the day she put her husband in the ground? She threw her hands towards Claire. Does she look like a criminal? Mother, it's all right. Claire demanded. Didn't remind her that technically she was a criminal. As part of her parole, the police could trespass all they wanted. She opened her purse to look in her wallet, and then she remembered that the snake man had taken her wallet. Claire saw the tattoo again. The gold-plated fang. The snake man's skin was white, and a detail that had startled Claire when she relayed it to the detective at the police station. Was it racist to assume that rich white people were only robbed by Black or Hispanic gang members? Or Claire had listened to too much rap music in spin class? It was the same thinking had made her conjure up the image of a shiny black gun when it was actually a knife that was being held to Paul's back. A knife that didn't even look real, that it still managed to murder my husband. Keep that in mind. It didn't even look real. Remember that. The earth started to tremble. Claire felt the vibration move up from her feet into her legs. Claire, Helen said. They'd been in Napa for a few years ago when an earthquake hit. Claire had been thrown from the bed, Paul on top of her. Woo, woo. Yeah, baby. They grabbed their shoes, but a little else as they ran past the broken water pipes and the shattered glass. insufficient sheer of reinforcement mode. Paul had said, standing in the middle of the crowd, broken street in his boxers and undershirt. A newer building would have base isolation bearings or at least quake resistant. Still still anchoring system that would buffer the shearing effect, from earthquake shaking.
Right. Hmm.
Listen to him drone on about his seismic loading, and the only thing I had to calm her down. Calm her. Claire. Claire blinked open her eyes and she looked up at her mother, wondering why her faces were so closed. Wondering why their faces were so closed. You fainted. Oh, she fainted. That's why. That's what that means, I guess. It just
Hmm.
doesn't sound, some of the verbiage doesn't sound like something I would say, but I'm not writing the book.
I get it. Yep.
I'm sick of them little sheets are wide eyed and bushy tailed jumping all over me like, oh, oh, are you talking about my son, Kaylee? My little furry son that you're holding hostage? Don't worry. I'll be back out to come pick him up. You better hand him over. Yeah. Okay. I didn't, Claire argued to the evidence pointing at the contrary. She was lying on her back in her own driveway. The policewoman was standing over her. Claire tried in vain to think of an insect the woman resembled, but honestly, she looked overworked and tired. The cop said, "Ma'am, just stay there. There's an ambulance 10 minutes out." Claire forced away the image of the paramedics who had rushed down the alley with the gurney in tow, the way that they had spent that last minutes of examining Paul before shaking their heads. Had someone actually said he's gone, or Claire said the words herself, or heard the words, felt the words, watched her husband go from being a man into being a body? Maybe. I don't know. Claire asked her mother, "Can you help me?" "Ma'am, don't sit up," the cop ordered. Helen helped her sit up. "Did you hear what the cop said?" I guess not. "You're the one who helped me sit up." "Not that. Someone tried to rob the house." "Rob the house?" Claire repeated, "because it didn't make sense." "Why?" "I imagined that they wanted to steal things, maybe." Helen's tone was patient, but Claire could tell that it was unsettled by the news. The caterers walked in on the burglars. Burglars? The word sounded like antique in her mother's mouth. Helen continued. There was not antique, antiquated in her mother's mouth. Helen continued. There was a fight. The bartender was badly hurt. "Tim?" she asked, because, I thought that the details might make her understand that this had really happened. Helen shook her head. "I don't know his name." Claire looked up at the house. She was feeling disembodied again, drifting in and out in the wake of Paul's absence. Like, can you imagine? Like, so she's so used to him taking care of everything, doing
Hmm.
everything, protecting her, and now the house is robbed.
Right. Everything's just going wrong for her.
Yeah, like
Hmm.
her whole world. Like, she just got off her ankle monitor.
Right. Yeah, because
She's
she's on
still
house
on parole.
arrest.
Oh goodness,
Her
that's
world's just out of hell right now.
no doubt.
Lord, somebody pray
Totally.
for that girl.
I know.
Jesus,
She needs Jesus.
she needs more than Jesus. Oh my.
Oh my. Okay. Uh, and then she thought of the snake man that snapped back into the present. Claire asked the cop, "There was more than one burglar?" She answered, "There was three African American males, medium builds, mid-20s. They were all wearing masks and gloves." Helen had never had much faith in the police officers with that description. "I'm sure you'll find them in no time." "Mother," Claire tried, because it wasn't helping. Because it wasn't helping. There was a silver late model four-door. The cop was gripping the baton handle on her belt, likely because she longed to use it.
Oh, oh
We've
my.
got
We
a
know where that's
state
going.
bolo. We've got a state bolo on a vehicle. Young lady, to me, a bolo is like a garnished string tie. A bolo is be on the lookout.
Right.
Yeah. Helen was a full librarian mode, again, taking all the angst that she could direct towards Claire. Could you trouble yourself to speak English? Uh, Grandma Guinea provided. It means be on the lookout. Am I right? She smiled sweetly at the cop. I have a color television in my sitting room. I have a color television. Like, I remember the day when we had black and white television.
Right.
I know
Lord.
some of you youngins don't, but like, Claire said, I can't sit in the driveway like this. Helen grabbed my arm and helped her stand. What would Paul do if he were here? Would he take charge? Claire couldn't do that. She could barely keep her legs underneath her. Did the burglars take anything? The cop said, we don't think so, ma'am, but we need you to walk through with the detectives and check. She pointed towards a group of men standing by the mudroom door. They were all wearing Columbo trench coats. One of them even had a cigar clenched between his teeth. They'll give you a checklist to generate an inventory. You'll need to go through the report with your insurance company. Claire felt so overwhelmed that she almost laughed. The woman might as well have asked her to catalog the Smithsonian at this point. I've got people coming. I need to make sure that the tables are set up. The caterer. Ma'am, the cop interrupted. We can't let anyone into the house until the scene is cleared. Claire put her fist to her mouth. So wouldn't you tell the cop to stop? Like calling her fucking ma'am, please? Ma'am, the cop said. Claire dropped her fist. There was a car stopped at the bottom of the driveway, a gray Mercedes, headlights on, yellow funeral flag hanging out the window. Another Mercedes showed up to stop. It stopped directly behind it. The funeral procession had finally caught up. What was she going to do? Falling to the ground again seemed like it was the simplest solution, and then what? The ambulance, the hospital, the sedatives. Eventually, she would be sent home. Eventually, she would find herself standing in the same place again with the detectives and the inventory and the insurance and all the bullshit. This was all Paul's fault. He should have been here.
Well, shoulda, coulda, woulda, but can't
He's
at the moment.
dead.
Oh,
Oh my God, he's dead. Like, how is he
mhm.
supposed to deal with this?
DRT, dead right there in the alley. Oh my goodness.
Oh, Kaylee said, okay, be right back. I'm on puppy hush patrol. Okay. Oh my goodness. He should be here. He should be taking care of all of this. This was his job. Claire Scott was furious at her dead husband for not being there to solve her problems.
Well, how? Yeah. Well, we get it, but obviously she doesn't get it. Not yet.
OMG. Honey, Helen asked. I'm okay. Claire had realized a long time ago that if you lie with enough conviction, you can usually fool yourself. All that she had to do now was generate a to-do list. That's what Paul would do. That's what he would have done. He always had he had always said there was nothing that a list couldn't solve. Conquer the details and conquer the problems. I'll go walk the detectives through the house. We need to cancel we need to cancel the wake. She turned to the limo driver who had been discreetly standing alongside. You can take my grandmother back home. Can you take my grandmother back home, please? She told the officer. Please cancel the ambulance. I'm fine. There are over 100 people on their way here, and unless you want them coming into the house, you need to post someone at the bottom of the driveway to stop them. Will do. The cop seemed happy to get away from them. I bet she did.
Hmm.
She practically ran down the driveway. Claire felt some of her bluster dissipate. She looked at her mother. I'm not sure I can do this. You're already doing it. Helen looped her hand through Claire's arm and walked with her towards the men in the trench coats. Did you hurt your head when you fainted? No. Claire felt the back of her head. The bruises from the alley were still tender. Another lump wouldn't make much of a difference. Have I ever fainted? Have I ever fainted before? No, not that I know of. You should try it. You should try to do it next time in the grass.
Oh boy.
Like you can pick where you're gonna faint. Like freaking get.
Oh yeah, it's like, oh no, let's wait until we get over here. That'll work.
Yeah,
Land.
here. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
let me pass that over here.
Oh my.
I
Oh
thought
me.
you cracked open your noggin. What it says. She seized her mother's arm. You don't have to stay here. I'm not leaving until I know you're all right. Claire pressed together her lips. There had been a time when her mother had been incapable of being present for anything. Listen, I know how you feel about the police. You need, but you need to cool it. Huckleberries, Helen muttered, your word for the incompetent policeman. You know, it just occurred to me that I'm just about the only person in our family who hasn't gone to prison. Jail. Mother, prison is far after you're convicted. Thank God, because I didn't use that. Thank God I didn't use that word wrong in my book club. Miss Scott, one of the one of the trench coat men walked over with his badge in his hand. He reeked of cigar smoke because it wasn't enough of a cliche to wear a trench coat. My Captain Mayhew, Donwoody Police Department. Captain? Claire asked the man. She talked after the Paul she had talked to after Paul's murder was only a detective. Was a burglary more important than a murder, or were murders so common in the city of Atlanta that they regulated it to the detectives? I'm real sorry for your loss. Mayhew dropped the badge into his coat pocket. His mustache was bushy and untrimmed hairs. Ew. Climbed down from his nostrils.
Oh, Lord have
Blech,
mercy.
blech. The congressman asked me to handle this personally. It's getting interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Claire knew who knew who the congressman was. Johnny Jackson, who had been Paul's benefactor from almost the start, awarding his government contracts that should have gone to more experienced architects. The man's early investment had been rewarded for over the years. Every time Quinn and Scott was given a new government job, Paul's personal Amex bill was riddled with charges for chartered planes that he never flew in, five-star hotels that he never stayed in. She took a deep breath and asked, I'm sorry, Captain. I'm feeling a bit discombobulated. Can you please start from the beginning and tell me what happened? Yeah, I can imagine with the funeral and all of this and is the last thing you want to be dealing with right now. Like I said, my condolences. Mayhew took his own deep breath, his far more raspy. We've got we've got a nutshell, but we're still fighting. We're still filling in some blanks. You're not the first person in the country to have this kind of thing happen. We suspect it's a gang of young males who read the obituaries to find out when funerals are, and then Google Earth the house and figure out whether it's worth robbing. Good Lord, Helen said. That's really beyond the pale. Mayhew seemed just as outraged. We think the burglars had only a minute or so before the catering van pulled up. They saw the broken glass from the outside door. He pointed to the glass, which was still scattered on the blue stone steps. The bartender went inside. Probably not the best idea. He took in a beating, but he managed to stop the gang from cleaning you out. Claire looked at the house again. Paul had been drawing variations of plans since architecture school. The only thing that was changed was the amount of money that he could spend. Neither one of them had grown up rich. Claire's father had been a college professor. Paul's parents had owned a farm. He loved having money because it made him feel secure. Claire loved having it because once you paid for something, no one could ever take it away from you. Had she not paid enough? Had she not paid enough for Paul? Had she not worked hard enough? Had she not loved enough? Been enough? Is that the way she lost him? Miss Scott, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Claire. Didn't know she was. I didn't know I was. Keep apologizing. Paul would have cared more about this. We would have been. He would have been outraged by the violation. Their windows broken. Burglars rifling through their belongings. On one of their employees attacked. Claire would have been right beside him, just as outraged, but without Paul, she couldn't barely force herself to go through the emotions. Helen asked, can you tell us if the bartender is okay? Tim, was it? Yeah, Tim. Mayhew nodded and shrugged at the same time. Most of the wounds are superficial. They took him to the hospital to stitch him up. Claire felt some kind of horror penetrate. Tim had been bartending for them for years. He had a son with autism and an ex-wife that was trying to win back. He was trying to win back, and he was being stitched up at the hospital because of something horrible that happened inside her home. Helen asked, do you still need but you still need Claire to go through the house to see if the burglars took anything. Yes, eventually. I know this is really bad timing, but what we need from Miss Scott right now is to know what the setup was for security cameras. He pointed at the black globe in the corner of the house. They were pretty sure that it got them coming and going. I'll take you to it. Claire didn't move. This going to get good right here.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take you to it. Claire didn't move. They were all staring at her, waiting. There was something else that she needed to do, lots of something else's. The list she felt her brain flip back on like a light switch. Like a light switch. That's a song. Claire turned to her mother. Can you ask the caterers to donate food to the shelters and let Tim know? We'll take care of the hospital bill. I'm sure it's covered under the homeowner's policy. Where's the paperwork? Claire didn't even know who their agents were. Miss Scott, there was another man standing besides Captain Mayhew who was a few inches taller and dressed slightly better than the rest of the group. His trench coat was nicer, his suit was better tailored, and his face was clean shaven. His easy manner should have put Claire at ease, but there was something about him that felt deeply unsettling. Not least of all because he was sporting a nasty looking black eye. The man indicated his bruised eye with a chuckle. The wife doesn't like it when I talk back. Get it? Helen said, domestic violence is so funny. She noted Claire's worry expression. I'll be in the kitchen if you need me. The black-eyed man tried again. Sorry, Miss Scott. My name is Fred Nolan. Maybe we can talk while you take us to the guts of the security system. He was standing close enough to Claire that he felt the need to step back. This way, she started walking towards the garage. Hold up. Nolan put his hand on her arm. His thumb pressed against her soft underside of her wrist. The control board for the security system is in the garage. Claire had never taken such an instant dislike to another human being. She looked down at his hand, willing the skin to freeze to the bone. Nolan got the message. He released her arm. As I said it this way, it's this way. Claire suppressed a shudder as she continued walking. Mayhew walked beside her. Nolan followed closely on her heels. Too close. The man wasn't just unsettling. He was creepy. He looked more like a mobster than a cop, but he was obviously good at his job. Claire hadn't done anything criminal, at least not lately, but hadn't managed to make her feeling of guilt go away. Nolan said, usually all of the security stuff is in the main part of the house. Fascinating, Claire mumbled. She could feel the headache working into her temples. Maybe the burglary was godsend. Instead of spending the next 4 hours entertaining Paul's mourners, she would spend half an hour with these a-holes before she kicked them out of the house and took a handful of Valium and go to bed. The complicated reasons Paul had tried to explain all the security mainframes were in the garage, which was a 2-story detached structure built in the same style as the house. Paul's office was on the top floor of the kitchenette, 2 walk-in closets and a full bathroom. They had laughed about this space being nicer than the hotel if she ever kicked him out of the house. Mrs. Scott, do you mind me asking why the alarm wasn't on? This was from Mayhew, who had taken out a notebook and pen. His shoulders were hunched as if someone had asked him to mimic a character from Raymond Chandler's novel. Claire said, I always leave the alarm off for the caterers. The gate was closed. His mustache twitched. The caterers have a front gate code and a key to the main house. Anyone else have a key? The question struck her as odd, or maybe he was annoyed by the way Fred Nolan was still breathing down her neck. Why would the burglars break the glass if the door in the door if they had a key. Mayhew looked up from his notebook. Oh, just a routine question, I guess. We'll need to talk. We wouldn't need to talk about anybody who hadn't had access to the house. Claire felt the tickling. Claire felt the tickling sensation at the base of her throat. She was starting to feel overwhelmed again. This was the sort of thing that Paul would know. She tried the house cleaners, our handyman, Paul's assistant, his partner, my mother. I can look for names and numbers. Your mom, Nolan said. She's quite the little pistol. Claire pressed the code into the keypad beside the 4-bay garage, and the heavy wooden door slid up silently on its tracks. She watched the men's eyes take in the diamond-plated wainscot and matching storage cabinets. The floor was a racetrack white with black rubber tile. There was a bracket for everything and hand tools, extension cords, tennis rackets, golf clubs, basketballs, sunglasses, shoes. Paul's custom workbench took up one side of the room. He had a charging station for the mini fridge and the flat panel TV, and an air conditioner for hot summer days. Then, of course, there was Claire's BMW, Paul's Porsche Carrera, and Tesla Model S. Holy shit, Nolan tone was, I don't know what that word is. Claire had seen men get harder over Paul's garage than they got over their own women.
Oh boy. Well, that's something then, isn't it? Oh my.
It's through here. Claire entered the 4-digit pad into another keypad and led them downstairs in the basement. She had loved that Paul loved his garage. He spent hours in there working on his models. Claire had teased him that the only reason he constructed them at home instead of at work was because here he got to clean up after himself. Kind of a neat freak, Nolan said, as if he was reading your mind. I got lucky, Claire told him. Paul's mild obsessive compulsive disorder had never stopped their lives or made him do odd things like touch a doorknob 12 times. Actually, his compulsive manifestations themselves in acts any wife could appreciate. Putting down the toilet seat, folding the clothes, cleaning up the kitchen every night. At the bottom of the stairs, Claire entered another 4-digit code into the keypad on the door, and it clicked open. Mayhew said, never seen a basement under a garage like this. Kind of like the Silence of the Lambs kind of thing. Claire flipped on the lights, and the smell of concrete room came into stark relief. Paul had designed the space to double as a tornado shelter. Metal shelves held food and supplies. There was a small TV, weather radio, a couple of camping cots, and plenty of junk food, because Claire had told Paul that in the event of an apocalypse, she was going to need lots of chocolate and Cheetos. She was glad she was still on her coat. The temperature was kept very low because of all the computers. Everything was controlled from the inside of this room, not just the security systems, but also the audiovisual systems, the automation of the blinds, fixtures, and whatever else made the house run like magic. There were banks of components, of which flashing lights and small desk with 4 flat screen monitors on articulating stands. Nolan asked, does your husband secretly work for NSA maybe? Yes. Claire was tired of the questions, which made even more grating by his flat Midwestern accent. The most expedient thing would be to just give them what they wanted so they would just go away. She opened the desk drawer and found laminated checklists that explained how to work all the security cameras Paul had tried to walk her through step by step. Claire's eyes had gazed over. She worried that she was going to have a seizure. Claire's eyes glazed over, and she was worried she was going to have a seizure. She tapped the computer keyboard and entered the access code to the system. Lots of passwords to remember. Nolan was leaning over her shoulder, looking at the screen. Claire slid away from the annoying man. She handed Mayhew the directions. You'll have to take it from here. Nolan asked, are all of your houses like this? We only have one house. Only? Nolan laughed. Claire had reached her limit. My husband is dead, and now my house has been broken into, and there's something you find funny about this situation. Whoa. Nolan held up his hands. She tried to scratch out his eyes. No offense, lady. No offense. Mayhem's mustache twitched again. Hard to offend someone you keep your fucking mouth shut if you keep your fucking mouth shut. Claire
Oh,
gave Nolan a look before turning away from him. She knew how to shut down a man. He didn't leave, but he looked a few steps back. He took a few steps back to let her know that the message had been received. She watched the monitors as Mehu followed Paul's checklist. The views were split into each screen, showed 4 different aspects of 16 different cameras. Every entrance, every bank of windows, the pool area, several sections of the driveway were monitored. Claire could see the caterers were in the motor court, turning around their trucks. Helen's silver Ford was parked on the other side of the garage. She was talking to one of the detectives outside the mudroom. Her hands were on her hips. Claire was glad that there was no sound. Mehu flipped through the pages of his notebook. Okay, we've got the basic time frame from the break-in based on when the caterers called 911. He picked up some keys and Helen disappeared from the monitor. The catering van went from making a sharp turn to pulling into the motor court. Mayhem skipped back the footage until he found what he wanted. 3 individuals at the bottom of the driveway. They were far enough away to be indistinct, just dark, menacing blurs making their way towards the house. Claire felt every hair on the back of her neck rise up. This was actually something that had taken place in her home. She noted the time on the video when the burglars were passing through the parking pad into the front of the house. Claire had been standing by the small, non-denominational chapel in the cemetery, wondering why she hadn't died in the alley with her husband. Here we go, Mayhem said. Claire felt a sharp pain in her chest as the blurs turned into men. Seeing it made it real, something she had to deal with. It was just as she had told. 3 African males in ski masks and gloves jogging up the driveway. They were all dressed in black, from their tight t-shirts to their sneakers. Their heads scanned left to right, coordinated pattern. One of them held a crowbar in his hand. The other had a gun. Nolan says, looks pretty professional to me. Mehu agreed. This isn't their first rodeo, I don't think. Claire studied the men walking so confidently toward the mudroom. Paul had ordered all the doors and windows from Belgium. They were solid mahogany with 4-point locks that were easily bypassed when a crowbar smashed the lead glass. And one of the burglars struck his arm through the window and turned the thumb latch. Sorry, I was checking on the poopy dog. Her mouth went dry. She felt tears come down her eyes. This was her mudroom. This was her door, the same door she used countless times every day. The same door Paul came through when he got home from work. Oh, that's
wow.
like, I don't know if you've ever had a car broke into or something, but it's like you feel violated.
Yeah.
Oh
Weird.
my goodness. And she'll never see him come home again through there.
Nope. Sad reminder, isn't it?
Yeah.
My goodness.
She said, I'll be upstairs if you need me. Claire walked up the stairs. She wiped her eyes, her mouth opened. She forced herself to draw in a breath, to let it go, to fight that hysteria living in the pit of her stomach. Paul's stairs, Paul's workbench, Paul's cars. She went through the garage. She kept going to the stairs in the back and climbed them as quickly as her heels would allow. She didn't realize where she was going until she found herself standing in the middle of Paul's office.
Hmm.
You ready?
Oh
There
yeah.
was a couch he napped. There was a couch he napped on. There was a chair he sat in to read or watch TV. There was a painting she had given him for their 3rd wedding anniversary. There was a drafting table. There was a desk, which he had designed so that no cords were hanging down. The blotter was pristine. The outbox held neatly stacked papers with Paul's angular handwriting. There was his computer. There was his pencil set. There was his framed photograph of Claire from more years ago.
Wow.
than she could count. Paul had taken it with a Nikon, Nikon
Icon, yeah.
camera, Nikon camera that had belonged to his mother. Claire picked up the picture, and they were at a football. Claire had picked up the picture. They were at a football game. Paul's jacket was wrapped around her shoulders. She could recall thinking of how warm it felt, how reassuring. The camera had captured her laughing with the mouth open, head tilted back ecstatically, irrevocably happy. They both gone to Auburn University in Alabama. Paul because it had been one of the top architectural programs in the country. Claire because it was far enough away from home to be meaningful.
Mhm.
She had ended up with a boy who had grown up less than 20 miles from her childhood home, which was further proof that no matter how far you run, you always end up back where you started. Wow, that was like a deep statement. No matter how far away you run,
Mhm.
you always end up back where you started.
That's like true talk, you know?
Mhm.
Mm. Wow.
Paul had been that breath of fresh air compared to other boys. Claire dated in college. He was so sure of himself, so sure of what he wanted to do and where he was going. He was an undergrad who had been paid in full ride scholarship and graduated in graduate school and taken care of by the money he inherited when his parents died. Between a small life insurance policy, proceeds from the sale of the farm, and the out of court settlement from the trucking company they that was that they had owned, the 18-wheeler that killed the Scotts, that was more than enough money for tuition and living expenses. Still, Paul had worked the entire time he was in school. He had grown up working on a farm where he was expected to do chores and crack down at the crack of dawn. In the ninth grade, he had won the scholarship to a military boarding school in southeast Alabama. Between new between two home lives, routine he had a drilled in system. He was incapable of being idle. One of his jobs during college was at Tiger Rags, a university bookstore. The other was as a tutor in the computer lab. Claire was an art history major, and she had never been good at math, or at least she had never tried to be, which was the same thing. She could vividly remember the first time she had sat down with Paul and gone over her assignments. Everyone knows you're beautiful, he told her,
Hmm.
but no one knows you're clever. Ow. This sounds familiar.
Something.
Anybody could be smart. It took a special somebody to be clever. Claire returned the photograph to its spot, sat down at Paul's desk. She rested her arms where the arms used to rest. She closed her eyes and tried to find a trace of his scent. She took in a deep breath until her lungs ached, then slowly sighed it out. She was almost 40 years old. She didn't have any children. Her husband was dead. Her best friend was possibly drinking margaritas at a bar down the street and gossiping about how washed out she had looked at the funeral. Claire shook her head. She had a rest of her life to think about how lonely she was. What she needed to do right now was get through the day, at least the next hour. She picked up
Mm.
the telephone and dialed Adam Quinton's cell phone number. Paul had known Adam longer than he had known Claire. They had been dorm mates for the first year at Auburn. They had been they had gotten their architectural degrees together. Adam had been the best man at their wedding. More importantly, Adam and Paul tend to use the same people to manage their lives. He picked up on he picked up on the first ring. Claire, are you all right? The police wouldn't let us up the driveway. We were robbed. Well, not robbed. They didn't take anything. It's just a nuisance. I'm fine. Was she fine? Only now that she had had something concrete to do did she feel that way. Listen, I'm sorry to bother you. But do you know who our insurance agent is? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. He sounded confused, probably because this was the last question he expected to hear from Claire right now. Her name is Pia Lort. He spelled the last name. I can text you her information. I don't have a cell phone, Claire realized. The snake man took it. I mean, like the guy who, like, okay, I'll just email it to you. Claire was about to tell him she couldn't access her email either, but then she remembered her iPad. It was an older model. Paul kept threatening to replace it with the laptop, and she kept saying it was fine. Now, she would probably pack it up and take it with her into 30 odd years when she went into the nursing home. Like, she didn't want to get rid of the iPad. Claire, Adam's voice was muffled. She gathered what she gathered she gathered. He was walking into another room. How many phone calls had there been between them where Adam had gone into another room? Half a dozen, maybe? So meaningless, so stupid. He listened. Listen, I'm really sorry about this. Thank you. She felt tearful again and hated herself for it because Adam was the last person she should be tearful with. I wonder why.
I don't know.
I want you to know if you need anything, as his voice tailed off. She heard a scratching sound and guessed it was rubbing his fingers along his face. Oh, I guess 5 o'clock shadow. Adam was one of those men who were perpetual for 5 o'clock shadow, even right after he'd shaved. Claire had never found a hairy man particularly attractive, but he had still managed to sleep. She still had managed to sleep with Adam anyway.
Oh, shit. Shoot. Where'd that come from? That was left field somewhere.
That's left field.
Wow.
She couldn't even console herself by saying it had happened a long time ago.
Oh, shoot.
So she
Back up.
cheated on her husband with him recently?
Obviously. Before he died in the alleyway.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, this shit's getting deep. Let's go.
Claire, I'm here. I'm sorry to bring this up, but Paul should have a file on his computer for work in progress. Can you email it to me? I hate to ask, but we've really got important presentation first thing Monday morning, and it would take hours to duplicate Paul's work. It's fine. I understand. She reached under Paul's desk and pulled out the keyboard. I'll send it from his email. You've got his password? Yes, he trusted me. Claire was conscious that she and Adam both knew he shouldn't have. Oh, what a stupid, pointless mistake, she said. You'll have it in a few minutes. Claire hung up the phone. She thought about the hours that she had spent with Adam Quinn, hours that she would have spent with her husband, hours she would kill to have back right now. There was no going back. She had to keep moving forward. Paul's iMac desktop was a blank field of blue with a dock at the bottom base with the icons listing Paul's applications were in 3 folders: work, personal, and house. The house had its own folder.
Right.
She clicked house and quickly found the January to-do list. She also saw a file titled insurance that contained not just the name of their insurance agent, but also a PDF with the descriptions and the photographs and the serial numbers of everything in the house. Claire sent all 508 pages to the printer. Next, she opened up the work folder. This was far more complicated and confusing. There was no work in progress. Uh-oh. Folder was just a long list of files with numbers instead of names. Claire assumed that these were project numbers, but she couldn't be certain. She clicked on the date filed to list them chronologically. There were 15 recent files he had been working on in the last 2 weeks. The last one had been opened the night before Paul died. Claire clicked on the file. She expected to find a schematic or scope of work, but all that happened was a little iMovie icon on the dock started bouncing. Oh, she said, because at first she didn't understand what she was seeing. And then she smiled for a moment since the snake man had told them not to move. This is the first time she had smiled since the snake man had told them not to move. Paul had been looking at porn on his computer. Not just any porn, kinky porn.
Ooh. Mm.
A young woman in a leather bustier was chained with her back to a concrete block wall. She wore a studded dog collar. Her arms and legs were spread eagled, giving her crotchless leather panties a workout, where she was making squeaky, fearful noises that sounded more like a 1970s horny than present day scared. Claire
Ooh.
shot a guilty glance at the open doorway to Paul's office. She muted the sound, but let the movie play. The woman was in a filthy room, which made it all the more shocking that Paul was interested. She was obviously young, but not alarmingly so. Her brunette hair was cut in a chick pixie. Heavy mascara ringed her eyes. Bright red lipstick made her lips seem bigger than they were. Her breasts were small, but she had fantastic legs. Paul had always liked Claire's legs, even when she had on the ankle monitor. Actually, he'd especially loved the ankle monitor, which was the kinkiest thing she had ever gotten out of him until he had turned inexplicably rough with her in the alley. And now, of course, because this movie was pretty out there, she suddenly a man's head filled the screen. He was wearing a leather ski mask with open zippers at the mouth and the eyes. Ew.
Oh, Lord. Help us, Jesus.
Help us, Jesus.
Help.
I
Help.
don't know. I don't know what that dinging sound that is that keeps going off.
I don't know.
Is it yours or mine? I don't know.
I don't think it's mine.
It keeps going ding.
Hmm. I don't know.
Oh, goodness. There was something disturbing about this red lipstick. The red lips showed up against the metal teeth of the zipper through Claire's throat. Claire doubted Paul had been looking at this man. The focus blurred, then sharpened. The smile disappeared, and then the man started walking towards the girl. Claire saw his erect penis jutting out from his tight leather briefs. There was a machete in his hand. The long blade glinted in the overhead light. The man stopped a few feet away from the girl. The machete arched into the air. Claire gasped. The machete came down on the woman's neck. Claire gasped again. The man reached out the blade. Blood sprayed everywhere onto the walls, onto the man, onto the camera. Claire leaned forward, unable to look away.
Oh, my God. Oh,
It's
Lord.
not funny. This person just died.
Yeah, no, but that we didn't. None of us was looking for that to happen. Oh my!
Was this real? Could
That,
this be real?
I don't know.
The woman's body convulsed, arms and legs pulling at the chains, head jerking. Blood poured down her chest, pulled onto her feet. The man started fucking her. Miss Scott. Claire jumped back so hard that the chair slammed into the wall. Are you up there? Fred Nolan was walking up the stairs. Claire banged on the keyboard, blindly searching for the way to stop the movie button.
Oh me.
Hello? Nolan's steps were getting closer. Miss Scott. She held down the control button, furiously tapping the cue to quit the program. Error message, error message. Started popping up. Claire grabbed the mouse and clicked each one closed. The rainbow wheels started to spin. Shit, she hissed. Miss Scott. Fred Nolan was standing at the open of the doorway. Something wrong? Claire looked back at the computer. Sweet Jesus. The desktop was blank again.
Oh my!
She willed her voice not to shake. She willed her voice not to shake. Yeah, what is it? Just wanted to say that I'm sorry about before. Claire didn't trust herself to speak. Nolan let his gaze travel around the room. Nice office. She tried not to blink because every time her eyes closed, she saw the woman, the man, the blood. Anyway, he tucked his hands into his pockets. I wanted you to know that I talked to the detectives, talked to the detective Raymond about your husband's case. She had to clear her throat a few times before she forced out. What? Detective Rayman, Rayman, uh, with the Atlanta police. You spoke with him the night your husband was murdered. She held her breath, trying to calm it. Yes. I want you to know that that was we wanted to let you know that we looked at all possible connections and there doesn't seem to be any one between what happened to your husband and what happened today. Claire nodded. Hmm. She felt a sharp jab pain in her jaw from clenching her teeth. Nolan let his eyes slowly take another tour of the office. Your husband was a tidy guy. Claire didn't respond. Kind of a control freak, she shrugged. Through Paul had never tried to control her except when he jammed her face into the brick wall in the alley that day. Nolan indicated the digital lock on the door. That's some pretty serious security. She echoed the words but Paul had often told her, it doesn't really matter if you don't set the alarm. Nolan smiled, his deeply unsettling smile. He wasn't standing over her, but he might as well have been. Well, need to send a crew up here anyway. She felt her heart stop. Oh shit. The computer, the files, the movie. That's not necessary. Nope, that's not necessary. Better be safe than sorry, ma'am. Claire tried to think of a good excuse to contradict him. Did the security camera show the men breaking into the garage? You can never be too sure. She summoned a weak copy of her mother's librarian voice. I would think 16 cameras would make sure, as sure as possible. Nolan shrugged. He was smiling at her again. Not to mention $500,000 worth of automobiles that are still parked in the garage. He kept smiling, and Claire realized that she was talking too much. Her hands were sweating. She gripped the arms of the chair. Nolan asks, something up here you don't want us to see? Claire forced herself not to look at the computer. Instead, she looked at his lips and tried not to think about the red, wet lips behind the zipper mask.
Oh, goodness.
He said, I'm curious, Miss Scott, did your husband say anything to you before he was murdered? She remembered the alley, the rough texture of the brick that had burnt the skin being scraped from her cheek. Was Paul suddenly into that kind of thing? Is that why he had this movie on his computer? Miss Scott, Nolan mistook her silence for embarrassment. Don't worry, Detective Raymond told me that why you and your husband were in the alley. No judgment here. I'm just curious about what your husband said. She cleared her throat again. He promised me he wasn't going to die. Anything else? I already told you all of this to Detective Raymond. Yeah, but that was a few days ago. Sometimes it takes some perspective to jog your memory. He pressed a little harder. Sleep usually does it. I've dealt with a lot of victims in violent crimes. There is this adrenaline rush that gets them through the hard parts, and then they have to tell their story to old gumshoe like me. And then they go home and they're alone, and then when they start to crash because their adrenaline is gone, there's no forward momentum. And then they fall into a heavy sleep, and then suddenly they wake up in a sweat because they remembered something. Claire swallowed again. He was perfectly describing her first night, alone. But the only revelation she had come when she had woken up was the sheets were soaked in sweat. When was when Paul was not there to comfort her. Comfort. How could that man who looked such vile filth possibly be the same gentleman who had been comforting her for 18 years?
Yeah. I mean, it just gets more intriguing as we keep reading. I mean, that none of this was in left field. I mean, I'm telling you, it's crazy. Wow. Speechless over here.
So Nolan said, "Do you remember anything? That seems useful? Just a stray comment he might have made, something unusual that he did before or after the attack. Anything you can think of, maybe? Maybe not even something he said, but maybe his demeanor." Hmm.
Hmm.
Remember, he roughed her up.
Mm-hmm.
Claire's hand went to her thigh. She could almost feel the missing streak of her skin where Paul had raked his fingernails across her leg. He'd never marked her like that before. Had he wanted to? Had he been fighting the impulse all those years? General demeanor. Nolan prompted anything he said. He was shocked. Was there they were both shocked. Claire clasped her hands together at the desk so that she wouldn't start wringing them. It's called Masters of the Universe Complex. She sounded like Paul, and in fact the phrase had came from her husband. It's where people think that status and money insulate them against tragedy. Do you think that's true, Nolan? Seems like you've seen more tragedy than most. That's a keen bit of detective work on your part. Claire forced herself to stray in the present, just forced herself to stay in the present. Are you a detective? Because when I met you in the driveway, you didn't give your title shown to me or your credentials. You're right. He didn't volunteer the information, so she said, I'd like to see your identification. Nolan was apparently unflapped. He reached into his coat pocket as he walked towards her. His wallet was a cheap bifold. Instead of a detective shield, there was a two laminated cards behind the plastic sleeves. Everything on top of the card was in gold ink, and the words read Federal Bureau of Investigations.
Oh boy.
The Blind Lady Justice, the Bald Eagle. The bottom card was in blue ink, and it showed Fred Nolan, colored photograph, his name, and it revealed that he was a special agent from the Atlanta field office. The FBI. What was the FBI doing here? She thought about the file on Paul's computer. Oh, shit. The mask. Had the FBI tracked down the download? Was Fred Nolan here because Paul had stumbled across something he shouldn't have? What Claire had seen could not be real. It was made up movie designed to appeal the sick fetish, a sick fetish that apparently her husband had either stumbled across by mistake or kept hidden from her for the last 18 years. Satisfied, Nolan was still holding out his wallet. He was still smiling. He was still acting like it was a casual conversation. Claire looked at the credentials again. Nolan had fewer gray hairs than in the photograph. Does the FBI routinely investigate foiled burglaries? I've been doing this job long enough to know that nothing's routine. He flipped the wallet closed. The gang who robbed your house cross county lines. We're hoping to coordinate between the two police forces. Isn't that the job of the Georgia Bureau of Investigations? You're certainly up on your law enforcement heresy. Claire had to put a stop to this before she gave anything away. It just occurred to me that you never answered my question, Agent Nolan. So maybe I should stop answering yours. Nolan chuckled. I forgot you've had experience with the justice system. I would like you to leave now. Sure. He indicated the door. Open or close. When she didn't answer, he closed the door behind him. He closed the door behind him anyway. Claire ran to the bathroom and then threw up. There you go. We will leave off chapter 4.
Wow. This is really getting good.
It's getting good.
So what do you think?
Jesus, I don't even know where the hell to start, honestly. I mean, it went from something to getting killed in the alleyway to like her, I mean, losing everything in her whole world that she didn't even know another world existed until a file was opened on a computer. Yeah. Wow. We're just going to stay tuned. For real, for real.
The Silent Dragon said, it is getting good. It is, huh?
I mean, wow. Definitely talking about secret life.
Could you
Damn.
imagine being the significant other and your significant other dies? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're this nice, sweet person, architects, button up type guy.
Right.
And obviously has well-to-do money, right? They
Sure.
wouldn't have all the stuff they have. And like in your situation, it would be a woman. And then you have to get on her computer to find stuff. And then you come across something like that. And you're like, whoa,
Well,
our love life is vanilla. Like, what the hell?
right. I mean, how would you process that? I mean, like her, I mean, she was flipped out, like, oh my God. It didn't remotely act like her husband at all, but clearly that was him in a secret life.
So, how do you process something like that? Especially to that extreme. Was it fake blood that with the machete, or was that actually a killing? I mean, uh, wow,
It's
wow.
crazy.
Yeah. Hmm.
Wow. We're only 16% through the book. We're at
Wow.
67 pages of 422.
It's only got to get more
Oh my gosh.
enticing. It's got to.
Oh my gosh. You like I'll send you the link that I listened to. She
Okay.
does it really good. Yeah. She does it really good.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So it says he waited for an ambulance, decapitated in a car accident. Oh. Yeah. It's good. It's
Mm-hmm.
good. It's good. It's good. Um, I'm going to close the section out here, the book out here. We will continue tomorrow, starting at chapter 4. There is 24 chapters, so we'll
Mhm.
probably take about 5 days to get through the whole book, maybe less. Um, we'll see. You're awesome. Thank you for hanging out with me.
You are very welcome.
It's fun to read. It's fun to read to someone who's like listening and can like
Sure.
interact. It's kind of fun.
My interaction's like,
Yeah.
mm-hmm. Yeah. But I'm doing a lot more listening than I am talking. I'm trying to do both, I promise. But
I know,
but
and I'm trying to like get to a section so then you can like respond to it. It is kind of like something I have to get used to. It's something that I've been
wow.
wanting to do for a while, and I just haven't. I'm chicken butt. I'm a chicken butt.
no, no, you did really well, and I think the people that were here and have been here would say the same thing. It's not. I wasn't bored whatsoever, and I get bored very damn easily. Um,
Really?
yeah,
I hope
really.
it made sense because sometimes I can drone on or run sentences in together and stuff.
No,
So
it
I
it was
tried.
great, and I'm not saying it because I'm sitting here in your stream. I'm just being honest.
Well, I appreciate it. I
You're
do. I
welcome.
do.
But I'll step down so that you can finish out your stream here. Freaking
Thank you
awesome.
so much.
For real,
Mm.
for real.
My
Mm.
bestie, don't forget to connect to Newman Gaming and Silent Dragon, who's in the chat. JD Live, who's in the chat. JD Live, it's so good to see you. Mm. DK Conspiracies, thank you for swinging in. I appreciate you all. We will be finishing probably chapter 4 through 8, maybe 4 through 9 tomorrow. We will go through the whole book and then we can have like a little discussion over it and see what you guys think. I appreciate each and every one of you for being here. Oh my goodness, I X'd myself out. I appreciate each and every one of you for being here, hanging out with me through my first book reading. I love you guys. You guys are freaking awesome. You guys, my besties. Oh, my besties.